I call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, May 9th, 2022, and the time is 6 p.m. I'm Amy Gurwitz, the Vice Chair, and joining us by Zoom is Claudia Gonzalez-George, who is our Chair. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Welcome to all those in the audience who are here to observe the board doing our vital work on behalf of our students. We appreciate the time you took to be here this evening. Dr. Hillman has a brief weather announcement and wants to mention a couple of items in the table file.
Yes, I'll start with the table file for this evening. We do have some items, an additional item in the table file. There's an expansion of the Arcadia Charter School contract. The update just includes one additional exhibit, Exhibit N. Then there are a number of consent agenda items, including personnel appointments, increase, decrease, change in assignment, 2 leaves of absences, and a resignation. And then just in addition, we are in a tornado watch here until 10 p.m. And so we are actually in the safest place in this building. This is the severe weather shelter between this and then just the hallway outside. So we should be fine in this room, but I just wanted to let people know the official severe weather is right out actually in the hallway, but this is also obviously a secure room as well. So in case we were to hear the sirens, that we will, of course, follow the appropriate protocol. And then I do think we should just make one other note about Chair Gonzalez-George participating remotely. All votes this evening will be roll call vote as per statute. And so she is in a public place. We did post the public location as part of the agenda last Thursday. And again, all of the votes this evening will be a roll call vote.
Great, thank you very much. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Motion by Jeff. Second by Corey. All those in favor say aye.
We need to do a roll call vote.
Oh, that's right. All right, do a roll call vote.
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gurwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez-George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmon.
Motion carries.
Amy, we should also take attendance via roll call here too.
Okay.
Broniak,
Present.
Butler,
Present.
Gurwitz,
Present.
Gonzalez-George,
Present.
Pritchard,
Present.
Quinnell,
Present.
Stratmon.
Okay, we're going to move on to the school board public comment guidelines. So the board has reserved up to 30 minutes of our meeting for public comments. This is an opportunity for community members to address the board. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. You cannot cede your time to anyone else. This is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear your comments. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comments about specific staff or student matters in open session, even without naming individuals. This includes the public comment portion of our meeting. The board respects and values your input, but when it relates to a specific student or staff member or to a specific incident, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. Corey will monitor your time and will indicate your time remaining at 1 minute, 30 seconds, and 10 seconds. We have 7 people signed up. And I will call your names in the order you signed up to come forward to the podium. Please be sure to speak clearly into the microphone. So our first public commenter is Hazel Shuffleton. Welcome, Hazel. Is it on? Can you tell if the mic is on?
Hi, my name is Hazel Shuffleton. I'm a Northfield middle school student. I'm in 6th grade, and I was extremely surprised to learn that all foreign language programs will be cut next year, not including Amistades. I've been taking French on Duolingo for 2 years, and I was really looking forward to being able to take French in person with an actual teacher. World languages are extremely important to me as a student, not only with the opportunities as like that come with it, but also there aren't a lot of other elective options. And now that robotics and engineering are gone for 7th graders, taking French online definitely does not have the same effect as it will or as it would to be taking it in person. And I'm really hoping that the board can find another solution for this cut. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Our next speaker is Michelle Martin.
Hi, I'm Hazel's mom. We'd like to thank the board and everybody in the district for the time and care they put into the budget decisions. We know they are extremely hard, and we support you and will support whatever decision you come to regarding all of the cuts. But we would like to urge the board to postpone the decision for a year regarding foreign languages and world languages at the middle school so that we have time to look for another option. I really don't think this, I know and I acknowledge that we are late to this process. I thought I was following things carefully, but I wasn't following them carefully enough. And so I missed this particular issue and haven't spoken about it until now. The entire world languages program for 7th grade is just 0.4 FTE, and that's for all 3 languages combined. Obviously with the 8th grade, that's a 0.8 program total for all 3 languages. The loss of the program will have a huge impact, not just on those 7th graders and eventually those 8th graders, but on the whole world languages program looking forward into the high school. I don't think our kids will have the opportunities to go as far with their world languages and do things like Rotary and the other things that we take such great pride in Northfield. Once this program is dismantled, I think it'll be very difficult to rebuild. We have a couple people who have spent a lot of time creating this program. And once that time is lost, that program's lost, I don't know that we're going to find people to rebuild it. If the funding comes through, if the students don't leave, if all those what ifs happen, please consider postponing the cut so that we can look for a creative solution for this program to survive. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next speaker is Tiffany Kurtbein.
Good evening. I'm Tiffany Corpine, and I'm the daughter of a 3rd-generation farmer from Dundas. I'm also on the board of directors for Minnesota Agriculture in the Classroom, and I'm a kindergarten teacher at Greenville Park. I'm reaching out to you in regards to this decision with the FFA partnership in Randolph. As an educator, I'm influencing the lives of the next generation of congressmen and women, voters and consumers. This is a heavy responsibility, and I don't think it should be taken lightly. Our future generations need to know where their food, clothes, and basic necessities come from. They don't come from the store. Agriculture makes up several jobs in our communities. We have farmers, milkmen, semi-driver, plant workers, such as the post employees, and store clerks, just to name a few. These people are my students' parents, neighbors, and friends. Allowing Northfield students to be educated about agriculture allows them to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And as future voters, they will be educated about the decisions they are making. When people drive into the great town of Northfield, they see colleges, cows, and contentment on our welcome sign. Less and less people are growing up on farms and do not have the firsthand experience in the impact agriculture has, like I did. Since less people are growing up on farms, we need to educate these individuals about how wonderful our community is and how we support the farmers in this community, don't we? FFA allows our students to learn more about farming and how it impacts our community and gives a hands-on approach to learning. One thing FFA does is they come out to Greenville Park, just like they have for the past 5 years, and presented baby farm animals to the kindergarten through 5th grade students on our farm day. This event will take place May 19th this year, and we encourage you to come out. Don't we? Come on out. Northfield also talks about the importance of college and career readiness, and this is one of the programs offered at the high school. Farming is a career, and it leads to many other opportunities. My son, a future Northfield graduate, I want him to know that he has the opportunity to be a 5th-generation farmer. I want him to be able to feel supported and given the resources he needs to succeed if that's the path that he chooses. I believe Northfield should offer FFA classes in our district. I also believe that more students will be given the opportunity to participate without the barrier of transportation if we offer them in the district. I know that we talk about equality, and having these classes here in the district will give more students the opportunity to participate without this barrier. Thank you, Dr. Hillman, for meeting with our state representative to find out about education, resources, and funding available. Thank you for your time and to consider not cutting FFA for our Northfield High School students.
Thank you, Tiffany. What's the name of your co-speaker? Thank you, Bennett. Get him here early. That's great. Okay, our next speaker is Grace Hoover.
Hello, I'm Grace Hoover and I am a junior at Northfield High School. As our FFA motto goes, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. Every day we learn how to grow as individuals, live responsible, to show compassion to all and how to think for ourselves. With our plot and farm, we are responsible representing the doing to learn. Every year, we plant our crops and students decide how we do it, when we do it, and what type of seed we want to use. The students are making the calls and arrangements. Each year, we sell fruit, popcorn, meat, cheese, and nuts to name a few. By selling these items, we earn money for our chapter. In the fall, we ask farmers to donate money or corn for Camp Courage, which is a camp for those with disabilities. And we give the money towards scholarships so everyone has a fair chance to go. I know for me and many of my peers, the ag class and outreach program want to pursue something in agriculture, whether that be animal science, soil science, or for me, agriculture, communications, and marketing. Without this opportunity of driving ourselves to go to this class, we won't be able to learn more about what we truly love. Agriculture is the foundation of the world. If we aren't learning about it, there will be no more future. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Our next speaker is Kristen Harner.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the importance of maintaining agriculture and career and technical education for our students. My name is Kristen Harner, and my husband Steve and I have 2 sons that attend Northfield and 1 that is old enough to participate in the Randolph Agriculture Partnership. Steve and I are both products of agricultural education and have spent our lives utilizing the tools gained from these experiences and sharing this knowledge with others. As you consider the budget options, I ask for your support to maintain the current model for agricultural education with Randolph, which includes the day classes currently for 11th and 12th graders and monthly evening classes held 1 night per month in Randolph for 7th through 12th graders. Both of these options also include FFA. These can be supported through funding sources that I and others have emailed to you, and the 35% CTE revenue from the Department of Education. In addition to that, we have shop teacher openings. With that, I believe there is an opportunity to support an option of agriculture, career, and tech ed teachers in Northfield for 7th through 10th graders. This position should be shifted to a position that currently only supports a top shop teacher, but could be an agricultural shop teacher and open the door to additional funding. If these funding options to maintain agriculture and career and tech ed are not fully explored, I do believe Northfield will lose more students to open enrollment to the neighboring school districts. Agriculture and career and tech ed offer classroom career exploration that sparks students' interest in careers and provides solutions to help meet local employment needs. Most importantly, agriculture and career and tech ed excites our children about their education and their future. In the email I sent to all of you yesterday, I included a video testimony from my 9th grade son, Keith Harner. He is unable to be here tonight because he's at baseball. and half of his team, as I looked around, would participate more than likely in agriculture and career and tech ed if it were offered to them in the school system. Aristotle stated that educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. We need to meet these kids' passions and interests that set them up for future success. We have funding opportunities, we have a potential teacher, we have an agreement with Randolph, we have a committed community supporting the agriculture and career and tech ed programs. I ask for your support to keep the agriculture program and evaluate opportunities to grow it in order to bring in additional revenue to the school district and to provide bright, exciting futures for our children in our community. Again, I ask for your support and thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen. Our next speaker is Meg Wiebe.
Hi, my name is Meg Wiebe. I'm a senior this year at Northfield High School. I'm a current member of the Randolph FFA, as well as a participant in the ag class at Randolph Public Schools. Personally, I have gained nothing but encouragement, leadership skills, and lifelong friends from this program. Cutting day class would be a huge loss of encouragement for the future of agriculture in our community. On behalf of Randolph FFA members, day class members, and teachers, thank you.
Thank you, Meg. And our final speaker tonight is Mar Valdecontes.
Hi, Mara de Cantos. I'm the translator for the district, independent contractor. I'm not part of the, I don't get emails from the district. Anyway, I'm here representing, we have a Hispanic committee of parents that we meet with Matt Hillman from time to time, and we're very pleased that that's the case. We have a superintendent that is able to listen and is wonderful. In the process of being part of the group, thinking the priorities for the budget, and Alejandra and I were part of those teams. We were talking about, as you know, EL cuts and so forth, and we want to reiterate the importance of EL for elementary level. That's when the families first interact with the district and they really need those services. And then as the kids grow and they have sisters and brothers, the system is not needed as much, but for those first families, so keep that in mind when you go through this process and as you look forward into the future and how we can do things. One of the things we also learned, a different topic with the security monitor from the high school, we didn't know crime was rampant in the high school. That's what we've learned through this process, and the open kind of comment last week showed that when the police officer came and talked about the issues at the high school. So now we are concerned as parents. We need that figure in our district. And lastly, the chronic lack of funds for the schools. This is not depending on having a split government as we have in Minnesota. It is not something that only happened 10 years or 30 years ago. This is chronic. This will continue to happen. We have to be really, really creative. So either the school district goes out of the way to find grants all the time, scholarships and so forth, or we create some type of nonprofit that will still be here in 20 years from now. So we are creative as private citizens and private money to support the school district, because this clearly won't go away. And that includes maybe having a full-time person doing grant writing. I don't think Zach Pruitt fits the bill. I don't think that's the thing that he's doing all day. And then having creative solutions like Lego building, or I don't know, another trademark that we can import here. So I encourage you to think long-term that way. and be creative. And good luck with this. It's been painful to be part of those meetings and prioritizing something that shouldn't be cut. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mar, and to all of our community members who addressed the board this evening. We're now going to move on to announcements and recognition. Dr. Hillman.
I do have one this evening that I just want to share. Pulling it up right now. So I want to share that the school district recently received a multi-tiered systems of support grant for 23 and 24. Northfield was one of 12 districts selected from 50 applicants across the state. We will receive $237,000 in fiscal years 23 and 24 to build our capacity to support the implementation of the Minnesota multi-tiered systems of support framework to improve academic, behavioral, and social emotional outcomes for students. So the grant does include a 0.5 MTSS coordinator that would be building an ongoing and sustainable district system and process. There's funding for an expansion of an integrated and comprehensive student dashboard for building level teams to use. That's more data, the data science component of it. There's also funding for release or extended time for district and school leadership teams to participate in planning and training that's provided specifically by the Department of Education. And there is compensation for staff training and coaching specific to systematic and explicit instructions across all tiers of multi-systems of support for math, literacy, or social emotional learning. And so those could be examples, the science of reading, like the letters program, or things like conscious discipline, an approach to discipline that has been very successful here in the district. So again, we're very excited to get that grant to help continue to build our multi-tiered systems of support.
That's great news. Does anybody on the board have anything they'd like to add? Julie.
Well, yes, I have something really exciting to talk about, and it has to do with Dr. Hillman. So Dr. Hillman has been a member of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators for the past 10 plus years. This organization has a membership of more than 900 educational administrators throughout the state. MASA, again, Minnesota Association of School Administrators, is a strong voice for public education through their solid and collaborative working relationships with state and federal policymakers. During that time, Dr. Hillman has demonstrated his outstanding dedication and efforts to support this organization's mission to support the success of every Minnesota student by fostering innovation within the education system and to create a world-class workforce. I am delighted to announce that Dr. Hillman has been voted by his MASA peers as president-elect effective June 1st. He will assume the position of president July 1st. Congratulations on being elected to the highest office within this organization. Your peers have recognized your outstanding leadership and your work with our state and national lawmakers to passionately and effectively advocate for our state's students and their families. Congratulations on being elected to this office. The organization is very fortunate to have you at the helm.
Anyone else have any announcements or recognitions? Okay, well, we will move on to items for discussion. And our first item is the Arcadia Charter School contract, and we'll welcome Laura Stetler, the Executive Director of Arcadia Charter School, to tell us what's up.
Not much, but it's pretty cool. I get to work with that guy.
Right back at you. Yeah, I will frame this. So we are really kind of shifting the handoff here to the district and to the board as the representative authorizer. So as you know, back in January, Laura presented the school's annual school improvement plan. And we also provided the preview for you that the contract with Arcadia Charter School was up on June 30th. Laura came back and gave a presentation about her application. At the last meeting, we officially shared that application process with you. And tonight, what you have in the packet is the contract that we are proposing. In the table file, there was one additional exhibit. We have pared the contract down quite a bit because Laura is very good at being able to embed links and things like that. So you've got the entire contract, but there's also some links to some other components. So it is over 100 pages. We'll be submitting this tomorrow to the Department of Education for a review that we are hoping to get the review prior to our next board meeting. This contract is our standard contract as the authorizer. This is a very similar, if not exact, language to the Prairie Creek contract that you approved last year, as well as the Department of Education had approved. Of course, there's differences based on the goals and the differences between the two schools, but this is the standard contract template that we use. I'm very happy to report that I am easily able to recommend another 5-year contract with Arcadia Charter School. So we will ask you to vote on this at the next meeting. There's which meeting and what is the date for the meeting in May that your board will adopt it?
May 17th.
May 17th. And then, so you will be asked to adopt this on, they'll adopt it on the 17th. We'll adopt it. We'll ask you to consider adopting it on the 23rd. Then we're responsible for submitting that to the Department of Education within 10 days of its execution. And then we will be ready to go for another 5-year period with Arcadia Charter School. So that is really all we have tonight, is it's the first reading of the contract, standard template. We've worked through in terms of you'll notice that the goals that the school has is really around the world's best workforce. The school has recently completed a strategic planning process. As you note, their finances are continuing to improve shape with nearly a 30% fund balance, which is appropriate for what we'd like to see in a charter school. The school is well governed, it is well managed, and the educational program is a success. So we are happy to recommend to you at the next meeting for another 5-year contract with Arcadia. And that is what we have for you on this evening.
Anything else from me?
Guess I'm up. Does anybody have any questions? Julie?
I don't have a question, just a comment. I appreciate Dr. Hillman framing the relationship we have and the great success that Arcadia has for so many students. And I appreciate that as a district and really as a community that we really fully embrace the charter school choice for our students. And I'm really always pleased that we have that option for students. We know how successful they are at Arcadia, and I'm just really grateful they have that option and that we have the opportunity to support that. So thank you for your work. I know this is not easy. It is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, and you will no doubt feel very good when you hit send on tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
And
very
I'll
much.
send it, Laura, just to be clear, I'll send, they're expecting it, so.
Sounds good.
I have just a quick question for Laura. Is there, are there very many changes to your old contract? You said it's similar to Prairie Creek's, but is it different from your previous contract?
I think it's probably pretty similar. The 5-year goals are remaining pretty similar. The one that's going to change is we were previously using the growth scores from the MCAs, which no longer exist in one of our, in the achievement gap goal in the world's best workforce. So that's changing. But other than that, it's pretty similar. We did add some pieces in the application that were different than the previous 5 years. My background being as an EL teacher, I was really interested in language. And so that came into the contract, the applications and things like that. But overall, I think the contract itself is extremely similar to previous versions.
Great. Any other questions? Well, I just want to second everything that Julie said. We're happy to be working with you and happy that you're part of the choices available to our students and that our relationship works so well together.
I'm very grateful to be able to work with such a wonderful group of people. And I really love being able to participate in the educational ecosystem in Northfield. It's a pretty awesome place. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item for discussion is our policy committee recommendations, and we have quite a few. So I thought we'd just start at the beginning and go through them. I have to find them myself.
Yes, this evening, we're just providing first reading for you on 504, 513, 520.1, and 526. Those are mostly revised and federal and state statutory changes. They include recent court decisions, and then they also align with the model policies from MSBA. These policies have gone through the policy committee for review, and they reflect the policy committee's feedback. And then we're also getting to handbook time of the year. So you have the ALC, the middle school, the MSYC Blast, the middle school youth center and Blast, plus in student citizenship handbook. Again, we're not asking anyone for any kind of vote this evening. This is simply just making sure that if this is first reading, so people have questions. And if you have questions between now and the time we bring them back the next time, you can certainly forward them to me as well, and we can be prepared to talk about them at the next meeting.
Maybe we should start out looking at the policies and then move to the handbooks. So does anyone have any questions on policy 504, which is the student dress and appearance?
We should make sure we ask Claudia if she has any questions or comments.
I don't have a question right now.
Thank you, Claudia.
Well, if anyone thinks of a question, we can come back to it. The next policy is policy 513, student promotion, retention, and program design. Julie has a question. Go ahead.
I have a question. So policy 513, number 2, and within that 2B, let's see what I wrote. All right, I must be under a different heading than I had originally thought oh, yes, here it is. So it's actually under 2C where it talks about assessments and procedures that are valid, reliable, fair, etc. Assessments and procedures should be sensitive to underrepresented groups, including but not limited to low income, minority, twice exceptional. I was wondering what twice exceptional was.
So what twice exceptional means is that there is a person who might fall into multiple categories. So this could be a student who, for example, qualifies for special education, maybe an emotional behavioral disorder, but also is someone who has a very high IQ, considered truly meets the definition of gifted, if that makes sense. It could also be an individual who might be a special education student, but also qualifies for English learner services. So those are the kinds of things that would be under twice exceptional.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And then when they when the word assessments and procedures should be sensitive, you know, how that really would be evaluated, or how you would be held accountable to ensuring sensitive is achieved.
Yeah, so this language comes directly from state statute, the new component of it. And so when we're looking at those assessments and procedures, we're making sure that they are reliable and fair. And I think the key part is that they are based on current research and theory. So we're going to be looking at and making sure that we're not using assessments that are inherently or known to be biased, or procedures that might be culturally unresponsive. So those are the kinds of things that we'd be looking at, Julie. And in most cases, the items that we use right now meet that criteria.
Excellent. Thank you. That was the only questions I had about policy 5.
Any other questions about policy 513? Okay, we'll move on to the next policy. Policy 520.1, use of students, employees, and or district data, including research requests. Julie.
So I had 2 questions about policy 520 district data requests, which I think is a good one to review at this juncture. When it indicates their authorization must be either the superintendent or the superintendent designee, how is that person determined?
Yeah, that person is determined by me. And right now, the only designee that we would have would be Hope Langston, who is the director of, this is specifically around the research requests. This is important. This is different than data requests. So we're talking about requests to conduct research. So the only 2 people right now who are authorized to, and I still need to sign off on it. So I am signing every research request yet. I can authorize other people, and I would authorize Hope Langston, Director of Instructional Services, to also do that.
Okay, that makes sense. So the heading, however, reads use of students, employees, and or district data. And
Correct.
then including research requests. So if this is solely research requests, why is that other district data part of the policy title?
There's two parts. There's another part about specifically about data requests that's covered in a different policy. This one is specific to using existing data that we have for the purpose of research.
I
And
see.
so we will often get requests for things like summative data around attendance or, other things like that in some cases, it's by strategic community partners who have completed the appropriate paperwork, HCI, for example, as we are studying some of the Northfield Promise goals and benchmarks. So the key thing is to identify here what student or district data are available for other groups to use as part of their research process.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions on policy 520? Let's move on to policy 526, hazing prohibition. Any questions?
And this policy just had a couple of very minor changes. One was really around the name of the school district, and the other was just looking at from the number of hours to a business day for the investigation in terms of immediately.
Okay.
There's also a change to how we disseminate the policy, but that's the only changes.
I don't see any questions, so we'll.
Amy, I
go
have a
back.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Claudia, what is your question?
Back to policy 520, does this policy cover the surveys that we put out to parents and to students? Or is that a separate policy regarding surveys?
We do have a separate policy that governs the use of surveys, Claudia. This is really about specific existing student, employer, district data. So it does not, it could potentially include survey data, but those surveys are governed under a different policy, the administration of them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Claudia? All
No,
right,
thanks.
thanks. Let's look at the handbooks then. The first handbook is the Area Learning Center Student Handbook. Does anyone have any questions on that?
And I will frame that there are very minor changes to the handbooks this year through these few anyway, very modest changes.
Mostly updating
Dates and things like
dates
that, yeah.
and people and things like that. Okay. That's a long one. Can I move on to the next one? All right, you can always come back if you find a question. The Northfield Middle School Student Handbook, any questions?
Questions or comments? Yeah, because it prompted some things. For winter sports, there's only wrestling and fitness center. There's no basketball.
Yes, so these are the school-sponsored activities. So the only two winter school-sponsored activities are wrestling and the fitness center. There is basketball, there is swimming available to students at the middle school, but those are through the local youth associations. Those changes, well, the basketball change goes back actually to the last time that we made significant budget reductions in 2011. And the agreement was that the Northfield Youth Basketball Association would provide the middle school program. And in turn, the district gives that organization a reduction in their rental fee so that they are able to encourage and provide scholarships and things like that for students to participate. So that was a little more than a decade ago when that particular change was made. Now, the other part is that in swimming, there are students who would participate in the local swim association, but it's also important to note that in the Minnesota State High School League, swimming is one of those 7-12 activities. So students who are in 7th and 8th grade very likely can participate on the varsity team. And I believe alpine ski is the same piece. So you will also see some wrestlers participate in varsity wrestling as young as 7th and 8th grade, but we do have a formal middle school run wrestling program.
Okay. And then also there's a chess club in the middle school. Would that be affected or impacted by anything that goes on in the high school?
Yes, so the chess club, the chess program that is a combination of the chess program at the middle school is part of the high school program. It has been for a long time. So we've discussed as we plan to, if the board approves that change, I want to be very clear, we're not proposing reducing chess club. We're proposing to move it from the high school activities department to the community education department. And the discussion will be, does there need to be a single program continued between the middle school and high school, or could there be separate programs? That will be dependent upon the amount of registration. We intend to be able to have 6th through 12th grade students participate in that. And whether it's one program or two programs would depend upon the number of students. The other part that I would point out is you'll notice that right now is a September through November and then a February and March program. There is a scholastic league that participates in chess in the fall. And then there is not a Minnesota State High School League sponsored chess tournament, but there is a Minnesota High School League chess tournament that happens in early March. Our anticipation with that change in chess would be to go from basically one longer season and one shorter season to offering 3 seasons, because there are a number of other tournaments throughout the state that people could participate in. So you would see something like the fall, that September through November timeframe, being something very similar to what happens now, participating in that scholastic chess program. And then a winter program that could start as early as November or December and go through March or even April, which would include that high school chess tournament, but it also would include, there are a number of other chess tournaments in the Twin Cities that those students could also participate in. And then, of course, there could also be a summer program as well with that potential change.
Okay, thank you. And then give me a second. I put the wrong date or the wrong page number. Under the safety exercises, does that include lockdowns?
Could you tell me which page you're looking at, Tom?
I put the wrong one. Page 15.
15.
Um,
Page 15, emergency safety exercise will be conducted every. Yes, so those would be included. So what would be included in that would be the state required fire drills, the state required severe weather drill, and the state required lockdown drills. We are required to do 5 lockdown drills as part of state statute.
Do we want to put that in there?
We can provide that feedback. Yes. We'll take a note of that.
Okay. And then the other thing is under student rights. I like seeing those, and especially the one that says the right to freedom of inquiry and expression, which would indicate to me that students can have posters or displays, even if they're uncomfortable for other people, just like everyone else, because the Supreme Court says that students don't lose their right to free speech just because they enter school building. So I'm glad to see that written there. And that's it.
Yeah, and I think the other part to that is, remember, those are enumerated, but they are also enumerated in the Student Citizenship Handbook, what we will talk about in a moment. And I think the key thing is that while the court has in Tinker versus Des Moines said that students do not shed their First Amendment rights at the schoolhouse gate, the key component is as long as there is not a disruption to the educational process. We've been very fortunate. We have had students in our district numerous times express their First Amendment rights in a way that was very appropriate, passionate, and yet did not disrupt the school day. And I think that that's just an important distinction to make. So yes, Tom, you're right. And the Student Citizenship Handbook further delineates that.
Thank you.
Other comments on the middle school handbook?
On
Jeff?
page 8. Oh, I'm
Claudia.
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
No,
Claudia.
go ahead. Well, you called on Jeff. Oh, he can go first.
I was just curious on how disruption to educational process is defined.
Yep, it's defined on an as needed basis in terms of, does the freedom of expression disrupt the free flow of the educational day? And so we don't have a set of criteria specifically for that. But if it were to disrupt, for example, a class period, if it were to disrupt someone who is teaching, if it were to disrupt some other kind of school specific event, those are the kinds of things, Jeff, that we would look at. And our administrators exercise their judgment in that case. And thankfully, because of the relationships that our administrators and our teachers have developed with our students, almost always they come to us ahead of time and talk about how they can make sure that their voice is heard in a way that is in alignment with the student citizenship handbook.
Claudia, your turn.
Okay, thank you. On page 8, or I believe it's page 8, where it is talking about dress, attire, under the title attire. Couple of questions on that. So if somebody determines that the attire the student is wearing is suggestive, then the process for that would be who either a student or a teacher would send that or report. If it was a student, they would report that to a teacher. If a
Yes,
teacher felt that if the teacher felt that the attire was suggestive, then it would the student would be sent to an administrator. My question on that is, if the parent was notified and they had a disagreement with what is suggestive, how does that get worked out? And then my other question was, in that last paragraph, it says, including visible undergarments. And then it goes on to say, and pants worn below the waist. And so I was just curious why that had to be explicitly included if we have already a statement that says visible undergarments.
Yeah, that's a fair question, Claudia, and I think that you'll notice that that visible undergarment component is new. And so I think that that would indicate that we might just need to take a look at that second part of the statement there, because I agree that most likely would cover what the second statement is. And I think on the suggestive component, it would say by words, picture, or appearance in terms of that part, because it says about being sexually suggestive by word, picture, or appearance. And so that would be something that would be the judgment of the administrator, and then working that out with the parent to the best of our ability. That is the best answer I have for you today.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments, questions? Okay, I realized I had a question about the ALC handbook.
Okay.
So it's just a quick question. I noticed on page 7, we're eliminating the honor roll. And I just was wondering what the thought process behind that was.
I will need to check with Daryl. I do understand that I think you are seeing that be a trend where some of the honor roll and honor designations are being eliminated across the state. And so I will check with Daryl and we'll have that information for you at the next meeting.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to move on to the Middle School Youth Center and Blast Handbook. Any questions or comments? Oh, Claudia, any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Then we can move on to the Plus Handbook. Questions or comments? All right, then let's move on to the Student Citizenship Handbook. Tom, question.
On page 10, there's a line about a third of the way down that says any infractions based on racist. It seems either out of place or missing context, or the racist doesn't seem like the right word. Or maybe that's
Which one are we looking at?
on page 10 of the citizenship handbook.
Oh, yes, thank you. So let's see. Yep, we will fix that. That was, I'm going to believe that we were copying and using that in some other areas. So we will, I think that was just an accidental copy
Okay.
and paste. We will fix that.
And then in the page 9 on student safety, I like the additions of free of violence, racism, homophobia, xenophobia, transphobia, religious intolerance, and chemicals. I think those are good additions, and thank you.
And Tom, I think that's actually, we had started going down the road of putting that in at one time, and we then edited it to where we put that within some of the specific student safety components. And so I think that that's where that hanging incomplete sentence was.
I trust you're following state statutes on this because I mean.
Of course.
Okay.
Other questions? Claudia, any questions?
No, thanks.
Amy, I just have a comment. I wanted to thank Anita Ozzie for her work on this. We are light years ahead of where we used to be, and Noah is shaking his head. He knows how difficult the process used to be. And you had, from the onset, you came on board and said, yeah, no, there's a better way. And so I know how it has continued to evolve. And I think this is one of clearly some new things that you have added in terms of our review. And I appreciate for the parent perspective, how all the links are embedded and it's just very user friendly. And I know how hard you've worked on it and the amount of communication you have to have with the buildings to get it to us. So I just wanted to thank you for that, because it really is important that we understand what policies and handbooks we are approving. And so to be able to have it in this format is just really great. So thank you.
He does the best, and we are continuing to work on what the next layer, the handbooks, Frank, we are going to ask you to approve them again for this coming year. But the handbook approach is actually quite antiquated. And so we are looking at how can we continue to provide people with that policy kind of information in a more modern methodology, because there are a total of 14 or 15 different handbooks. And there's a lot of repeat. There's a lot of things that every time a change is made, we have to look in all those different handbooks to validate, in terms of, do we get it in every single one? So it's inefficient. So for the last couple of years, we've intended to be able to try to modernize how we are providing this communication about these policies to families. And we have been waylaid, as you might imagine, by some global health emergencies. But we do intend to start this process in the fall and bring together a work of people who are able to look at how can we continue to streamline and make this user friendly. We do not want it just to be something for people to see it's in the handbook. We actually want it to be a descriptor of how we expect the school day to operate, how we expect students and our own staff to behave and act. And so we will continue to look at how can we modernize these to make them simpler for the board and for our families and students as we move ahead. So if people have suggestions or ideas on that, we are all ears.
Excellent. Thank you.
Last chance. Any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yay, go for it.
Okay, did I miss something? Why don't I see the high school?
Yeah,
handbook?
we are not there yet, Claudia. So we have, there are 15 handbooks. The policy committee has been able to review, I would say 4 or 5 of them so far. We will be bringing you another set of them at the May 23rd meeting for the first reading. So we didn't feel we could wait on all of them. So we brought what we had for first reading tonight. We'll ask you to approve those at the next meeting. And then we will bring you another chunk, probably about another 10 handbooks to the next meeting for first reading.
Thanks.
I think the fact that we don't have a whole lot of comments and questions shows just how far we have come in cleaning up the handbooks, because I remember years where we've spent long periods of time going through lots of things in the handbook. And it also shows how great the policy committee is, I'd say, from the 3 members of the policy committee right here. So let's then move on to the last item for discussion and reports, the superintendent operations and COVID-19 update.
Yes, I will start with a brief COVID-19 update. And what I do want to share is that unfortunately, we are seeing a recurrence of COVID in our schools. Of course, schools are a microcosm and we represent the community. So what we do know is that we do get a very good count of the active cases in our school because people do report them to us. We are required by the state to report any student and or staff COVID-19 positive test, whether it's an at-home rapid test or a PCR or equivalent test to the state. So the last time I reported to you that we only had around 30 new cases reported in the last 14 days. When I updated the dashboard this morning, we actually took it down a few cases, but in the last 14 days, we've seen 132 new cases throughout the school system. What I will tell you is that this is yet again another different version of the virus. So what we saw in the fall, and then when we had, if you recall, 600 cases alone in the month of January, this particular iteration of the virus is manifesting itself according to the reports that we are getting about symptoms as a much more traditional mild to moderate respiratory illness. So we are seeing people who are testing positive. We are seeing people with symptoms. These symptoms are not as profound as what we had heard in January. I'm not trying to minimize that because anyone who is ill is ill. But what we are talking with people, we are starting to also see a handful of people, specifically staff, who have now tested positive twice over the period of time. In almost every case, when I talk to those folks, they say, this time does feel markedly different. The good news is that when we take a look at our influenza-like illness rates, our influenza-like illness rates continue to fall within our guidelines. And so we have had some that have gotten into the 4. So last week we did have one school that averaged a little bit above 4%, but still nearly a full percentage point below our 5% warning mark. You would notice that the Northfield Community Ed Center did hit 5.34% for the week. Again, whenever we see the Area Learning Center or the NCEC hit that 5% mark, we are very cautious with that data. Those two schools have a much smaller total number of students and staff. And the NCEC, by its very nature, having our youngest learners in the daycare circumstance and in the preschool circumstance, and having early childhood family education, there's a very small percentage of the total people who access that building who are there every day. So while we did go above 5% there last week, it did decline toward the end of the week, and it is not something that we have a concern at this point. We are not anywhere close to where we'd consider thinking about any kind of reactivation of any kind of safety protocols. This is our lot. This is what we are going to see. We are going to see where we have bursts of the illness. We are going to have to understand that each iteration could require a different response. At this point, the response that we have been using is appropriate. It is seeming to work as well as it can be. And so we do not plan on making any adjustments in the near future. Of course, we reserve the right to do that should we see that influenza-like illness rate be above 5%, and something where even if it was above 5%, we would really take a deep look at the data. Was the data going up during the week? Was it well above 5%? Were we seeing 7 or 8% like we were seeing at some schools in January? Those would be things that we would take into consideration before we made any kind of recommendation. I think the most heartening thing right now is that the intensity of the virus is presenting itself right now more like a traditional mild to moderate respiratory illness, and that's very important. And so while we know that there are more cases than what any of us would like to see, we feel that our protocols and the testing that we have available in the school system is very good. We also know that when we compare ourselves to the broader community we know across the state is vastly underreporting, because when people are doing stay-at-home rapid tests, of course, no one's calling to say, I want to report this to the state. That's just part of the shift that we've seen from the state's previous testing approach, to this ubiquitous rapid at-home test. We also know that we have a number of people who have some symptoms far worse than what we're seeing in our COVID population right now, who are not testing positive, because there are some other very difficult respiratory illnesses out there right now. So this is exactly the point of learning to live with the virus. It is difficult for people who are out. We are disappointed for them, and we are working to make sure that they have the tools that they need. But right now, we believe we are in about as good of a spot as you can be, considering where the rest of the state is at. Second part of my report today is about something that's really happy to share with you. As you know, back in December, I reported that Northfield Schools was only one of 6 districts in the state to win a competitive Grow Your Own grant from the Minnesota Department of Education. This grant is intended to help Black, Indigenous, and people of color from our community to attain their teaching licenses. And the Northfield Teaching Fellows Council, that's the organization that we have set up to oversee this grant. It is a partnership between the Northfield Public Schools and the Northfield Healthy Community Initiative. We recently ran our first round of grants, and I'm very proud to share with you that we have selected the first 5 recipients. They are Jennifer Antoine, Nadine Bartola, Adriana Bermudez Arojo, Alondra Esmeralda Ortiz Martinez, and Karen Lorena Rodriguez Rojas. So remember that these fine candidates must meet one of the following criteria. They must have graduated from Northfield Public Schools. They must be a parent of a current Northfield Public School student. They must live within the Northfield School District boundaries and or be a current Northfield Public Schools employee. So as long as you meet one of those criteria, you're eligible. And the grant is allowing us to fund what we believe up to, we'll actually now believe it will be more than 17 people, but the original anticipation was we'll be able to fund around 17 people of color from our community to attain their teaching license. Teaching fellows will receive up to $2,500 per year in tuition assistance. They'll receive one-on-one advising and support throughout the program. They are eligible for a $1,000 stipend per year to assist with living or other college costs, could be transportation, childcare, things like that. And they will also get a connection with a Northfield School District mentor teacher. So as we talk about our strategic plan, we talk about our commitments to people, to learner outcomes, and to equity. We know there's a bevy of research that shows that students of color benefit greatly when they see teachers of color on their faculty. And so from those 3 strategic commitment perspectives, we are very pleased that we are taking to action part of our strategic plan. So this is a receipt showing that we are living those 3 particular strategic commitments. So we're very excited about that. We will run our next round of applications late summer, early fall. And that is the report for tonight.
Any questions for Dr. Hillman? Comments? Julie?
Yes, I have 2 questions. One around the COVID-19 update. My question is, where are we at with the district's COVID testing site in terms of hours that we're offering testing?
Yes, so we unfortunately had to put the testing center on hiatus for a week, and it is now back open today. We were down to literally just a couple of appointments a day. And so we are running that from 9 to noon, Monday to Friday. And again, we have expanded who is eligible for that. So anyone who is associated with the school district, so it's a staff member, a staff member's family, a student or a student's family are eligible to use the Q testing center. And then of course, we do have a significant inventory of at-home rapid tests. So even when our testing center was on a hiatus for a week, we were able to provide people with rapid antigen tests. We have a variety of different pieces. We have got the ones that require the cell phone. We also have a good inventory of Binax Now. So we have plenty of tests for people who need them, and they can get them from the district office for free or from their school office in many cases.
Excellent, thank you. And then my second question, we are just now being made aware, but I understand that we will have a portion of our staff that will be eligible for some potential frontline pay that the state has just recently authorized.
Yes, there was a compromise in the state legislature last week that finally did get the frontline worker pay bill done. We do know that there will be school employees who will be eligible for it. There are a number of, as you imagine, the devil is in the details. And so we did receive our first communication from the state about it last week. It does appear that people will have to individually apply. That's what it looks like from their website right now. So we are awaiting further direction from the Department of Education of how we help our school staff who would be eligible for that pay to be able to secure it.
Excellent, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Claudia, any questions or comments?
No.
I have a question, Dr. Hillman. My question is about the Grow Your Own stipend. First of all, I'm curious in general of the people who are chosen, sort of what categories they fit into generally. Are they mostly college students or are they mostly parents, or And then I'm also wondering about if they're already in the process of getting a degree, does that scholarship apply retroactively? Can they get it for this year, or does it not start till next fall?
Yes, so without getting into the details, what I would say is that there's a combination of residents who are still in school, or there's a couple of people who are in school right now pursuing their teaching license, who are either very close or nearly done. And then there are three who are folks who, a couple of them are employed by the school district and are employed in non-teaching roles at this point, and will be going to select and to secure their teaching license moving forward. So that's how I would characterize it. There's a couple of alumni, a couple of employees. In fact, I would say at least three of them would qualify under that employee component. I'd have to check to make sure I'm right on that. But I would say that there's two of them for sure that are currently in school, and then three who are not.
And when can they start collecting?
Yes, so basically, most of the tuition is not eligible retroactive. Obviously, they've already paid their tuition for the spring semester. They would be eligible to use the tuition assistance beginning this summer. So we intentionally got this done at this point for people who were still taking courses over the summer, so they could begin that process. And then we are working through that there is the possibility that people will get that stipend. That stipend is, you will get that stipend now. We have at least one person who's very close to finishing, like within, might be just a few weeks. There had been some thought that they might need to go another semester, but that was rectified. And so the possibility they could get a prorated potential stipend in that case.
And then I know it's early in the process, but how do you imagine if they then come to apply for a position, is the expectation that they'll apply back in our school district? Is the expectation that we'll give them some priority because they went through the program? How does that work?
Right, so we would not be allowed by law to provide priority or preference in those cases. What we are wanting to do is, our goal is really to increase the pool of diverse candidates that we have applying. So it's very clear, we're saying, we want you to apply here. We would like to see you be part of our staff. We can't go as far as guaranteeing that, but we are able to say, they'll learn from us, right? We'll be able to coach them on application and interviewing techniques, things like that as part of that mentoring program. We are not able to guarantee a position, but what we are able to do is say, we really want you to apply. The goal of this is to be able to increase the diversity of our applicant pool.
Great, okay. Well, then let's move on. We'll move on to the approval of the consent grouping. As a reminder, there were some personnel items in the table file to be added to the consent grouping. And is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping?
So moved.
Moved by Corey. Seconded by Tom. Right now, vote for Anita.
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Okay, motion passes. So now we're going to move on to the items for individual action. So there's going to be 4 parts to this process to discuss the fund balance. And I'm going to let Matt give a little background here.
Yeah, so I first want to thank everyone, both here in the audience and for those of you who are watching online who participated and actively engaged in this budget prioritization process that goes back several months. And as we know, this has been very difficult work. I think it's, as I've said a number of times, I would have been very disappointed if we did not have people who would have expressed serious concern about all of the reductions that we are proposing, because that would mean that some of the programs that we had did not have meaning to people. And as you know, from people who have participated in our board meetings, at our community forum recently, this evening, emails that we have received and that other feedback, people are passionate. That's exactly what we want. And we don't want people to lose that passion. while these reduction proposals are incredibly difficult because everything that we offer has meaning to people, we know that they are necessary. And I know I've said it many times, but I think every time we start this, we need to revisit the why we have to do this because it is important. People tune in at different times. They may not always come to this discussion till the end. So I am going to take just a few moments, if you'll indulge me, to remind people why we are doing what we are doing. So the importance is one of our strategic commitments is stewardship and making sure that we provide the community with a sustainable program. You know that around 70% of our revenue is directly tied to student enrollment. And we have a demographic study by one of the preeminent K-12 demographers in the state who suggests that we will have 400 fewer students over the next decade. And when Hazel presented that here in January, you recall, she gave several reasons, most of which were continuing lower birth rates and seeing fewer students matriculate into our schools as a result of that, and the serious housing shortage that we have in here in Northfield is the two reasons for 400 less students over the next 10 years. We also know that we have had chronic state underfunding, as one of our public commenters said, for over 30 years. If you were to just adjust the per pupil formula simply for inflation, going back to 1990, they would need to increase the per pupil basic formula by $1,640 or approximately to be able to provide today's formula with the same buying power that it had in 1990. And so while people are very much paying attention to inflation right now because it's been at around 8%, we have been paying attention to that incremental inflation without the appropriate funding adjustment for the last 30 years. And I have said this numerous times. My predecessor and mentor, Dr. Chris Richardson, said it at the board table for this district twice as much as I've ever said it, because it is true. And it is unequivocal that we can take a look at the CPI, we can look at what has been provided to the state legislature, and we've been chronically underfunded. Most recently, the piece that we have that is our I would say is our largest funding issue right now is the special education cross subsidy. Today at the Capitol, our statewide educational organizations rallied to bring additional light to this issue. And so as we've said, special education cross subsidy are the amount of general fund dollars that we spend as a school district on services, what I would say are morally imperative services for students with disabilities, but that those services are unreimbursed. In Northfield, that was around $5 million in fiscal 20. To fix the entire states, to wipe out the existing cross subsidy across the entire state would be $781 million. Of course, the legislature right now has 10 times the amount of that money in their budget surplus. And we are going to come awfully close to running the clock out. There's been some really great discussion about this issue. And in fact, I've had a discussion with several people who were not familiar with the special education cross subsidy, who this really kind of put it in even a different light for me, who suggested in a very appropriate way, well, Matt, those things do take some time to fix. And as I reflected upon it, we've been waiting for 40 years for this to be fixed. How much longer should we have to wait when the state has 10 times more than the amount of money that they could do to fix that right now? So we've been waiting a little while, Noel. It is more than a generation. So I only share those pieces, not to excuse, but to explain why we are at the citizens of the Northfield Public School District have footed the bill for this chronic underfunding, and we have no more room for people to help fill in. People are generous. They'd like to find what other ways can they help us fill in these pieces. We are going to be continuing, as we've mentioned, specific to some of the public commenters around the ag program. There is some additional funding that we are now aware of, and I can assure you that we will be getting that funding even this year, that we'll be getting that funding. So we will leave no stone unturned. But when it comes to the citizens of our school district, continuing to fill in the gap of the legislature, that time is unfortunately gone. So these painful reductions of $4.5 million over the next 2 years are necessary because we need to provide a sustainable system for our community. So I frame that again simply because I think that we have to keep coming back to that. We have acted responsibly. We have been validated numerous times for our financial management, most recently by Standard & Poor's yet again with the prestigious AA+ bond rating. So we have managed our money well. We just are running up against this chronic underfunding and declining enrollment. Want to thank the 70 people who participated on 3 different budget teams coming together for 4 meetings. We put out an all call across the community asking people to participate and help us prioritize. We had over 70 people participate. Everyone who expressed any interest in participating was included. No one was turned away. So it was a very comprehensive process, and we thank people for doing that. We know it's important to make sure that the public has numerous other opportunities to comment, which is why we made sure that we shared the information well before the last board meeting. We had a community forum that we anticipate around 40 members of the public attended, 60 total, including our administrators. We thank the people for coming and engaging and expressing their opinion, both in the small group and in the public comment portion of that meeting. I do think that when you take a holistic look at the proposed reductions, they are balanced and impact nearly all segments of the district. So it is something that is a balanced set of potential reductions, and they are all painful again because our programs have meaning to people. And they're particularly painful because the reductions impact our friends, they impact our neighbors, our colleagues, and most importantly, our students. So as we go into this portion, what we plan to do is each different package, there are 3 packages, and then we're going to ask you to make some decisions on our fund balance target. We're going to treat each package similarly to how we handle the consent agenda. So what we're going to ask is at the beginning of each package, we're going to ask if any board members request an item that would be considered separately. We ask that you share that item by line item number. Each of the proposed reductions has a line item number. So I'm going to use the number 0 because there's not a 0 in the package. So if someone were to say, I'd like to ask that we consider line item E0 separately, that automatically comes off if any one board member asks for that. After we get the items that people would like to consider separately, we'll go line by line between those items that we have pulled for separate consideration. After discussion, if there's a board member who would like to move that we maintain or continue a program for a particular either period of time, or just say we'd like you to maintain this program. If that particular item gets a motion, a second, there's discussion, and it is affirmatively voted in that way, it is removed from the package. You can have discussion. Someone may not feel the need then to make a motion. It could be that someone moves that a program be retained, but it dies because there is no second. Or it could be voted down in terms of that we do not want to maintain that program, moving forward. That then goes back into the package. After all of any of the individual items that board members would like to discuss separately are completed, we will then vote on the package itself, and we will ask you to make a very specific motion. So for example, let's say that E0, there is no E0. If E0 is the only item pulled from the elementary package that was voted affirmatively, the motion would be, we move to approve the elementary package budget reductions as presented with the exception of line item E0. We will help you. This is a little messier than what we normally do, but we think it's important that as the elected representatives of the community, that you have the opportunity to help with these final decisions. We need to take a moment and thank Val Mertersdorf, Director of Finance, for her incredibly hard work to make sure that you have the data to be able to make these decisions. And we have done our work. We promised you a thorough, and a set of balanced reductions that would equal a total of around $4.5 million over 2 years so that we can maintain our fiscal sustainability. That is what your administrative team has done. And as the elected representatives of the community, is now your job to take it and affirm it, or tell us that we have on 1 or 2 or how many ever you feel that we have to go back and think about something different. We would prefer if we don't get into the micromanagement of the packages. In essence, if there's something that you say we want to maintain, there's no spreadsheet tonight. There's no target, right? We've given you our recommendations. And if you tell us that you want us to remove something, we will make the adjustments. If we think that that program needs to be adjusted in some way, shape, or form, we will make those adjustments. But we will make sure that your will is worked out and completed at the end of the day. So I just want to ask Val, is there anything else you'd like to share as we frame this, or we covered it well enough? Okay. Are there any questions about the process?
I have a question, not about the process.
Not putting it on the board, no? You should have it in your packet. So we will go ahead and.
I have a question before we start.
Go ahead, Claudia.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that there isn't any changes to the material, the packages. The only changes that were made is a column was added with the designation of the line item. Nothing else was changed.
That is correct. Nothing else was changed. The only pieces that were changed in that updated document, there were two items. One was there was a column that was added indicating a package number. And then in the, in the secondary programming, there was one additional explanation given under the 5.0 FTE reduction. There's no change to the reduction. It just further illustrated what would be eliminated as part of that line item. Is that helpful, Claudia?
Yeah, what line number is that?
Give me just one moment and I will tell you. That would be on line item number S2.
Okay, thank you.
Just indicated one sentence at the end to talk about specifically about the non-Amistades world language electives.
Okay, thank you. Was the security position also some details added to that?
I do not believe so. That school security part was, it should be exactly as it was in the previous iteration, Claudia.
Okay, thank you.
And I do want to reiterate too, that there's the one column that has the double stars. That would indicate that that program is not scheduled for reduction for 2022-23, but for 2023-24. And just to remind folks, we are using one-time COVID funding from the federal government to make sure that those programs can continue on for one more year.
Okay, I think we can get started with this process. First, I wanted to thank all the team members on the elementary team for putting this packet together for us to discuss. Are there any line items that people would like to remove for special consideration in the elementary package? Julie.
I would like to pull E4 Portage Elementary for separate consideration.
Anyone else? Any line items?
Make sure we specifically ask Claudia.
Claudia?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we've removed one line item and let's just have some discussion on that. Julie, you want to explain why you wanted to remove it?
Well, I think, as we know in the secondary package, it is slated for the secondary portage to be funded with the one-time, with our additional COVID funding to support the secondary portage program. And I think the reasons for doing that really are the same for the elementary and elementary portage. And I think that this is a long-term strategy that we entered into as a result of COVID, but as we really began to realize was a strategy and an opportunity for us to be able to service students that would really look for this type of program. And I think if we are going to, as we have talked in the secondary program, intentionally marketed the program, that we can easily do that for the elementary portage as well. And so I feel like it's a little early at this juncture to abandon the elementary portage program, but to continue it in tandem with the secondary program as well.
Any other comments about E4? Corey.
Thank you. I would second everything Julie said. If we opt out of this early, we're going to lose a lot of momentum. I realize it's not a large program yet, but there are revenue opportunities long term. If we continue to have secondary in the long term, but don't have the elementary package, I think we're going to minimize the number of students we could organically grow within the district. Also, I would like to point to the second objective or priority statement about keeping class sizes small at the elementary level, while 30 students across all three schools with 6 grades is pretty minimal effect. But in the long term, if more students opt for this, that could help reach that goal as well. So I'm fully supportive of continuing the program for another year and reassessing next year to see where Portage as a whole stands at that time.
Any other comments? No.
I noticed that E3 is related significantly to free and reduced lunch applications. Do I
Yes.
understand it correctly?
Correct.
Is there anything, it seems to me, you know, my dad would say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It seems to me we need to figure out how to make that horse drink.
Yeah, and I think on E3 and others that are tied to the compensatory funding, Noel, we'll continue to advocate. There are other statistical models that would be able to gauge the level of poverty in a community.
Good.
We are continuing to advocate that we see something different with that. In addition, as of right now, remember that this funding is 1 year behind anyway, so that part is already, we already know what we're going to get for next year. But if the Department of Agriculture does require that removes those free meals that have happened over the last couple of years, we know that we will see an increase back to what we would have seen before with those applications. But we still believe, we did find out recently that Minnesota was selected as one pilot state to use Medicaid status as an automatic qualifier. That's of course a really good piece for us to be able to automatically qualify students. So E3 and others that are associated with compensatory will continue to advocate, but if it continues where Department of Ag does not move the free meals forward, we know that those will go back up. And at the same time, we also know that funding is already a year behind.
Thank you for your explanation.
Julie,
I would like to make a motion to continue the Portage Elementary program through the 2022-23 school year.
do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion on the motion?
Make sure we ask Claudia if she has any questions.
Claudia, do you have any questions or discussion?
No.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote then. Oh, I'm sorry. No.
In the process, applicable not only this one, but to everyone, what is the trade-off then? You know, in this case, it's $300,000. Is there something else that's going to happen that'll allow that to be added?
So Noel, what we have determined is if there are, we have given you the packages that equate to right around 4.5 million, depending upon how you would choose to go with the fund balance. We are not going to have you select other items for reduction. What will happen is we will fund those for the next year with, we do have some existing or we have some additional COVID relief funding that we have intended to use for further budget stability for next year, because we just don't know what happened. For example, we have an election in November. We don't know how that will impact us in the funding next year. So we have only committed about half of our remaining COVID relief funds. Our first place with anything that you restore would go to those COVID relief funds. And then, of course, we're hoping is to not have to bring back additional reductions. This is why we did it this way. We will take what we have with those COVID relief funds and we will use that next. And then depending on what you change with the fund balance goal, that would be more of a longer term sustainability piece. So we did not want you to have to pit things against each other here tonight. You have heard Val talk about the financial circumstance. You know where we are at. You are the elected representatives of this community. If you tell us that a program should stay, it may not be, it may not continue exactly as it did last year, but we will then administrate the program in a way that we feel is responsible based upon the number of students who participate.
Thank you for the very helpful explanation.
My pleasure.
Comments, questions? All right, so the motion is to maintain E4. Can we have a roll call vote?
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmoen,
Aye.
Motion passes. So, Julie,
I'm sorry. At this juncture, I would move to approve the elementary reductions package with the exception of E4 Portage Elementary.
do I have a second? Second by Corey. Any last discussion? Roll call vote?
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmoen,
Aye.
And the motion carries. Right now, we'll be moving on to the secondary package. Once again, I'd like to thank the secondary team for all their hard work to put together this package for our consideration. And I want to know if there's anyone has any line items that you'd like to remove from the secondary package for separate consideration. Tom?
Yeah, I'd like to remove S9, agricultural education, from the package.
Okay, S9 has been removed from the package. For consideration. Any other special considerations, items? Yes, Julie.
I would like to remove S4 school security for separate consideration.
Okay. Jeff?
S6.
S6, and that's the chess club for special consideration. Anyone else? Julie?
I believe with the removal of S6 for separate consideration that we should remove S5 to discuss as well the co-curricular activity of cheerleading.
And Claudia, do you have anything?
No, not at this time.
Any other items? Okay, I am actually going to suggest that we remove S3, which is the secondary portage.
And just a reminder, that is not scheduled to be discontinued this year. It's scheduled to be discontinued the following year, just for clarity.
And any other special consideration? Okay, we'll move on to discussion. And I think I'd like to take these in order, but we can go back and forth a little bit if things come up. So since I mentioned secondary portage, I will start out by saying I just think that we are still too new to this program. And I would just like to give it a chance to succeed. I think there's a lot of potential there, and it could bring in income to offset our costs.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's not scheduled for, as I said, for removal this fall. And we've committed to making sure that we do marketing for the next year. So you would have an opportunity to restore that again before the 23-24 school year. If that would be the will of the board, we would bring that back before you and say, here's where we're at, especially considering the elementary portage piece that we just said to continue for one more year. I would suggest that my take would be we leave it as is with our pledge that we bring back reports to you quarterly during the school year so that it stays in front of you.
And I could see doing that. My concern would be that if it's sort of on the fence, maybe people wouldn't market it as strongly or take it quite as seriously. But I'm open to that.
I can assure you that we will. It is Val and I, we will be doing the marketing. So I can assure you that it will be done well, as best we can.
Any other questions about portage?
Just to clarify, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I thought you followed me.
I did.
Okay.
Corey.
Just to clarify, are you concerned that families may not take it as seriously if they think it's on chopping block next year?
Well, I'm actually satisfied now that I heard Matt's explanation that he would give us regular updates on it. I think that would be helpful, and knowing that we would have the chance to keep it alive going forward. It's not assumed that if it's not in the budget, that it'll fall off the table, so.
And I agree with Dr. Hillman that I'm hopeful that this is a long-term, well, you didn't say that, I want to put words in your mouth, but I'm hopeful that this is a long-term project that we continue and find benefit in, and I'm satisfied with looking at it again next year.
Other comments about secondary portage? Okay, then I would like to move on to S4, school security. And that was Julie. You want to explain why you wanted that one?
Well, why this again is an item that is not slated until the 23-24 school year. I believe there's some merit in discussing this position ongoing. And I think one thing that I appreciated about the work session was exploring potential additional revenue that could offset the cost of this position. I think this position is valid and important in that without this person, my concern is a lot of this would fall on other administrators in the building that I know are already tasked with a great deal of other responsibilities. So with that and with the level of service and things that this position is able to do and the opportunity, I think we have potential to offset the cost of this position. I feel like we could make this an ongoing position and look to, again, find funding opportunity or revenue opportunities to offset the cost.
Other comments on this
I have
position?
a question.
Claudia.
Amy, I have a question about it. Julie, what are you referring to with funding opportunities for this position?
We presented, as I understood at the work session, Val, you thought there might be some opportunity for safe school levy and or in combination too with potential for reviewing parking fees and increasing those, since we haven't done that in recent years.
So the position is actually currently funded with Safe Schools Levy. And so the Safe Schools Levy is also, counselors are one of the allowable costs in social workers. And so with the additional counselor being prioritized by the secondary group, the anticipation was kind of flip-flopping that and using some of that funding to support that. I did do kind of a rough analysis on the parking fees. We did actually reduce the parking fee this past year to help support additional students being able to access that. But if we were to increase the parking fee to basically cover the cost of the position, it would be roughly $130 per parking permit.
In addition, or?
In addition.
So right now the fee is 100. So you're saying we'd have to go to 230.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we would look at doing.
Because currently the position is like we're already generating that revenue. So to take that position out of Safe Schools Levy and generate revenue to cover it, it would be in addition to what we're currently doing. We could absolutely choose to continue to leave it in the levy. Just to be clear, that is an option. That just means that the other positions would be in the general fund.
So what I'm understanding, then I appreciate having the discussion, and that's really why I pulled it, so that we could kind of talk through funding streams for this position. I am reticent to necessarily say that a parking fee increase is something that we could commit to right now. My position, I think now on this is because this is funded through next school year, that like secondary portage that we just discussed as well, is we just let this go and then we revisit this next year.
And in the meantime, maybe look for other possible sources. And this position it's the parking lot security, but it sounded like from comments that the person holding the position made that they do more than just, watch the cars come in and going out, in that there are a value to the school. And like Julie, you said about if that person doesn't do it, someone else has to. So even though maybe there could be a split between an increase in parking fees and something else, because in addition to working the parking lot, that person or the position also serves some value to the school's other safety concerns. And then I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, and I want to be really clear. I think this is a great example of how all of these positions and programs that we have on the agenda have meaning and value, right? I mean, I do think people go to that initially, that the parking lot word is first. I think that that's what people perceive, but it is an addition, right? The parking lot is one part of it, and the security monitoring is the second part. And we've had very good success with that particular person. They've done a great job, but we of course look at the position itself. And so all of the positions on here have value. We did use the prioritization process to determine which positions were on. If it was up, if we could find a different way, we wouldn't put anything on the list, here. But unfortunately, that's why it's on there, based upon the prioritization that the groups did. Of course, that's one of the things when we put something on for the following year, you would have to take an additional action to restore it. Anything that is slated for next year, we will make sure that comes back for your consideration as part of the budget process for next year. That's what our commitment has been to you. So the consideration of additional parking fees and other kinds of funding. The thing is that what we will always tell you is that we will be concerned about using any kind of grant funding for this kind of ongoing position, right? When we look at grant funding, we look at things for starting new projects or equipment or things that will outlast. But as you know, we can struggle from time to time if we are trying to live on grants to be able to fund positions. So Val and I will always come to you saying, we don't want a plan that relies totally on grants, right? We want a plan that relies on predictable funding to the best of our abilities. So we would bring this back to you again next year with, I will be straight up, we will bring back with a parking fee increase as part of it, maybe not as much as what we've said tonight. We've done the analysis of what would it cost to cover the entire position. There are we would look at what other ways could we potentially do that and then give you some of that suggestion. It is possible. We have advocated at the legislature for years, again, to increase the Safe Schools levy. That is something that continues to fall on deaf ears, but next year being a funding year, that's a possibility that maybe the legislature would take up at that time as well. And that would be another venue in which we could use that for this kind of position.
Yeah.
Yeah, I echo Julie's point and bringing that forward for next year. Like she said, it's not slated till next year. We talked about earlier with Matt, when I talked to you, that for COVID, we took the parking fees down to 100, and kind of the norm is, it was before 150. So if you're looking at that 150, so whether it's all in part, I don't want our parking fees to absolutely skyrocket, but going back to 150 and that would be, how much money comes out of that, plus other ideas that would help with that position. Also too, eyes and ears all around the school district, whatever, this position is entailing, that, we need people around and just, seeing what's going on for security.
And to be clear, this position is solely at the high school.
Okay, right. Well, yeah, for the high school, of course. Yeah.
Julie.
I just wanted to make a point about parking fees as we are discussing them, that we are cognizant of the burden that puts on students, and that we do offer free parking at Rockfields for students. So there is a way for a student to drive a car to Northfield High School and not have to pay a parking fee.
That's correct.
Thanks for bringing that up, Julie. I drove a car to high school for, my time at Northfield. And I did, and I talked to Matt, and to me, it sounds a little bit insane of even having a fee at a public school. But again, we only have so many spots. We're charging the fee. And if you do want to drive, you can pay nothing and park over in Rockfield. So we are offering that option.
No,
I have a question regarding S9. Is it appropriate to bring that up?
not quite.
Okay, tell me when it is.
All right. Tom.
So the school year is 9 months and 200 a month. I mean, 200 a year for 9 months is what, $23 a month to park? When you
Trust your math, Tom.
well,
I
it's
haven't done the
it's something about
calculation yet.
that, so, in the scheme of things, that's maybe not out of the question, but I don't know.
And what I will say about fees is that we know that fees are inequitable. Because what it means is if you have the means to pay that fee, you have the ability to do so. Now, we do offer a free option, right? So people who don't have that ability, but we overall have attempted to remove as many fees as we can, specifically for curricular items, but because we have a limited number of parking spots, because of those kinds of things, that's one of the reasons that we are choosing to use a parking fee as well.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that, as you know. But it's also inequitable. Not everybody can afford a car. So
is
if
true.
you have a car, there are things related to that. And this position wouldn't exist if there were not cars in a parking lot. So in a way, it almost seems like,
Well, that may or may not be true, right? Because the parking lot is one component of it. The security monitoring of the rest of the school is another part of it. Do I agree that I think that the parking lot makes it a more sustainable position? Yes. If we didn't have the parking lot part, I think you could potentially reduce the number of hours per day. One of the reasons that position is 8 hours a day is so that person can be monitoring at the beginning and the end of the school day. So you're right. It does have a major component on it, but I would say that there's a number of other schools that have a security monitor who aren't necessarily part of the parking component.
so that sort of says that, it almost says that that person is a security person first and a parking second, and that funding for that position wouldn't be tied to the parking.
I
sort of.
think that it's a significant portion of it. And I would argue that it would be totally appropriate to increase the parking fee to help cover the cost of that particular position.
Thanks.
Other comments on security monitor?
I have a
Or-
comment.
Oh,
Go ahead,
Claudia.
Corey. Go ahead, Corey.
Real quick, I know we're treading on micromanaging here, but I have a question out of curiosity. Are all the available parking passes spoken for in any given year?
I don't know the answer to that.
That's fine. It's curiosity.
Claudia?
So I just wanted to comment that, this is the pressure of the lack of funding is, making, just like Matt was describing, making these difficult decisions. And that we're looking at the position, not the person, because, as has already been shared, all of our employees are valuable. And all of them are doing more than their job description, right? And so I think with these reductions, we're going to see everybody carry more. We're talking about reducing the class size, and that means that more people are going to carry, more responsibility. So it is heartbreaking. This has been really difficult for me to, look at all these reductions and understand that they impact teachers. They impact, the security person who's forming relationships with students and staff. So it's difficult. And so I just wanted to echo that comment that Matt made. And I had a question about that position. Wondering how the new security system and the presence of the SRO possibly at specific hours of the day could help fill in the gap should this position be eliminated.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that I would argue, or not argue, excuse me, I would articulate that it's important to remember the school resource officer is a district-wide resource. And we certainly could discuss about a more specific and structured schedule. There's some pieces around DARE, for example. Part of the school resources officer's job is to do and to teach DARE. So that is a part that you take out first, but we could also talk about the potential, I would say, more formalization of the schedule, if that is something that would be a probability moving forward. And on the new security system, Claudia, I do not that we're going to vote on later, the security cameras are reactive in nature. And so it isn't the kind of thing, as we've said before, we don't have people who are watching our security system real time, like you will see in some businesses and those kinds of things. So I'm not sure that the new security system would really replace or be able to provide any of the services that the current security monitor provides.
Any other comments on S4? I have a comment on it. I think it's also important to take into consideration the costs that we would incur by having someone else having to check the parking lot, whether that's the assistant principals having to go out there a couple times a day, using up their time, which is, I'm sure they get paid more than the parking lot monitor does, but whether they would actually have time to do that, whether we'd want to take that time away from their other more important duties that they get paid more money for. So to think about the cost involved in that, also to consider the deterrent involved by having a person actually physically in the parking lot, sort of watching over things and having these students know that as they arrive in the parking lot, there might be someone watching them right there. And there's someone, if they have an issue, there's someone who can point them in the right direction or help resolve a conflict that they might have. So I think this position is important, and I'm open to letting it just go for another year. But I think if we do that, we have to commit to reviewing it again in a year, as you promised, but also commit to letting the employee know that it's not a done deal, that her position is ending at the end of this year, that we're waiting to see how things go. And, she is a long-term employee of the district, and we do value her. And I think she needs to know that if the vote goes that way, that she shouldn't take it too much too seriously, but wait and let things unfold over next year. All right, moving on to S5, and I think Julie, this was you again, the cheerleading program.
Yes, we have talked about S6, which is the chess club. So I thought it made sense to surface and have a further discussion around S5, which is the discontinuing the cheerleading program. And I understand why that came up for a potential reduction, in that we only have 5 students who are choosing to participate in the program at this point. Are you aware, was there any discussion, and I felt like I missed that, whether that is something our community services could take on?
I think that, just to be clear, yes, there were 5 students this past year, and then we did an analysis. There's been an average of less than 10 students who have participated in that going back to 2015-16. And so the potential could be for community education to offer something similar to it. I'm not sure that it would be exactly what it has been. Of the 3 options, of moving things to community, I think this is the least likely to replicate what you typically have in an activities program. But again, what we've done is we've taken a look at what are the areas where there are the least number of participants, and that is the reason for this is being on the list.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions about S5?
Question. I mean,
Yeah.
Cheerleading, obviously, it seems, you would have some people show up and be, talking about cheerleading, but I'm just curious to know that, where has that gone, and why do you think that the interest is not there? And to Julie's point, if we did bring that over in community ed and you tried to have, what other districts or whatever, I'm just kind of baffled in the sense of why cheerleading is kind of gone away.
Yeah, I think that my sense would be that what you have seen is you've seen an increase in additional athletic activity opportunities for students. And so I think that they have chosen other athletic opportunities rather than that particular program. And again, it's meaningful to the students who participate in them. It's not that it's not meaningful. It is that there are so many other options. If you think going back 40 years or so, the number of opportunities that our students have for participation, not only in athletic activities, right, but in a number of other non-athletic co-curricular activities. There are so many choices for students that in this case, students have voted with their feet.
Other questions about cheerleading?
Amy,
Oh, Angela.
I don't have a
Go ahead,
I don't
Joy.
have a question about cheerleading, but I do have questions about a different item. And so I neglected to ask if we could pull S2, and I'm willing to wait till the end of the discussion.
Sure, I'll put that on the list.
Thank you.
So I have a question about cheerleading. Right now, it's the $7,500 covers the coach. Is that right?
Yeah, so it would cover all of the items that are included in the program. So mostly it would be the coach. It would also be any kind of supplies or things like that. And it would also include any transportation. So Val, do you want to speak a little more about that, please?
That really covers the
Okay,
expenditures.
very good. Just checking.
Yep, it's the salaries for the coaches and the transportation are really the largest expenditures there.
So if there's an average of about 10 students a year, we're looking at like $750 per student we subsidize. Would that be fair to say? Or
They would be charged, I would assume, an activity fee.
They are, yep.
Because it's part of the program. So there is likely some revenue that comes in. I'm not sure what that fee is off the top of my head, though.
and do you have a sense of how much that compares to other sports like, football or hockey or gymnastics, how much we cover per student for those sports?
I have not done a specific analysis on per student cost. There's quite a few variables depending on the sport. So football is obviously a little more equipment intensive, but we have a different. We have some operating capital funds that help support helmets and kind of a cycle for that, and for uniforms and that sort of thing. Hockey has the ice arena cost, but that is something we can lease levy. So there's just lots of different variables, and the number of participants can drive where that goes as well. If we need 2 buses versus 1 to transport students. And so I've not done a specific analysis on per student, per activity cost.
I just am curious as to where this fits in the range of all the different activities, because I'm sure we subsidize all the activities at some level. And
Oh, significantly. I mean, the cost, we want to remind people that co-curricular activities are a very small part of the total budget, right? It's what, 2%, 1%, 2% total.
Probably.
I think in this case, again, to provide a balanced set of reductions, this is a program, that while valuable to the people who participate in it, we've had an average of less than 10, and we've seen it continue to reduce in the last several years.
could it become a club sports where it doesn't have a coach and
No, it cannot.
cannot? Okay.
It could go to, the possibility of it going to community ed, because remember, there is no such thing as a club. We cannot have an activity that does not have an advisor or coach. That's just, we can't do that. We need to provide the appropriate supervision. There is the possibility of looking at an innovative structure through community education. But there wouldn't be an opportunity to do it differently within the existing activities budget.
Because I just see, cheerleading seems as all-American as football, peanut butter and jelly cheerleading and football. And I imagine that if we get rid of an official program, there's going to be some unofficial thing that springs up. And I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but something we should be thinking about. Other questions about cheerleading?
I have a comment.
Yes, Claudia.
Just a reminder that, cheerleading was indicated that only 5 students were participating, and that the priority statements that the committees put together, emphasize that we would have activities that are of interest to a lot of students, a wide range of students. And so we don't want to get rid of any of these programs. I don't want to get rid of any of these programs, chess and and cheerleading and, you know, the monitor, but well, the monitor wouldn't apply with the interest of students, but just a reminder that has to do with how many students are interested. And in this case, it sounds like cheerleading, Matt was explaining, perhaps more students are choosing other athletic activities. So I just want to make that comment.
Thank you. But did you have something, Julie? Okay. I think it's time to move on to chess.
Yes.
And that's Jeff.
Yeah, well, I just brought that up and we talked about that earlier. I talked to Matt that we could move that over to community ed. That would be what I would suggest.
Yeah, that's what the recommendation is. The recommendation would be to move it from the activities department to community education. We have not started this process yet. I do want to really be very clear too that some of the concern that we've heard from current chess participants is around the possibility of lettering as a varsity sport. That is something that we are looking at. We have another very successful, actually, it's the fastest growing activity that we have in the district right now, which is our bass fishing team. It's a summer program. It's outstanding. That right now, because of the nature of that athletic, is being run through community ed. The question would be, we make the rules on who letters, right? So we would direct the activities department, you know, to consider how would we offer the potential for lettering to programs that are not necessarily funded by the, you know, directly through the activities department. So I understand we have not completely figured out that concern. I do think the advantage of both the one act play and the chess club, one act play has not been conducted since 2019 for a variety of different reasons. But the truth is that both of those could then run for 3 seasons. So for example, you know, there are 3 community ed bulletins each year, and the chess program across the state is about much more than just the scholastic program. So we see no reason that a chess club could not participate in the same scholastic program that they participate in now. There is a high school, a Minnesota high school chess league. It is not the state high school league, but it is the high school, as I mentioned this before when we were talking. There's that. So a winter season could include the practice and the participation in that. There are also a number of other weekend chess tournaments that the group could identify and say, as part of the winter season, these are the 4 tournaments that we're going to suggest participation in. We know there's a real interest from the current parents of the chess club students to potentially where I could see them doing a booster club. There could also be a summer season, which is something that we obviously currently don't offer. So the possibility could be, I wrote the statement that would say it eliminate the competitive chess program available through the student activities department. My mistake in that is that it does not necessarily have to eliminate the competitive chess program. It is simply through the activities department. I do understand the sense of loss that can come from something like that. As you know, we are one of the few schools in the state that still have a program like this through our activities department. We do believe that it can continue to be competitive and potentially even expanded as such through community education. And this is as a dad of 2 former chess students.
Other comments about chess? Corey?
At last week's forum, I expressed my interest in trying to find a way to continue this, particularly given the small number around it. But through conversations with you last week and what I heard tonight, I'm satisfied with what I heard, and I think it can be run successfully through community ed. So thank you for all the work you put on this specific item, because I know you've heard from others as well.
All right. Lottie, do you have any comments?
No, not on chess.
Okay, we're going to move on to S9, Ag. And it's for Noel. You had some comments about the Ag program.
Yeah. I'm really reticent to discontinue the partnership that we have with Randolph in agriculture. And I'd go back to the story of my own family where my brother was ready to drop out of high school as a junior. And the veterans ag teacher, it was 1949, said, I'm going to offer agriculture to the students that want to take it. And it enabled him to, it spirited him to stay in school. He graduated, he got the Ag Award for the year, and eventually he went on to own 5 sizable farms, which have got some tax benefits. So I think there's an agricultural need in this community, and I think that we should continue that relationship if at all possible.
I would also just like to point out, as we did update you at the community forum last week, that we are eligible immediately this year for $14,000 from the State Department of Education for additional funding that we did not believe we qualified for because we were not directly employing those teachers. Val spent quite a bit of time from Shelley Stoles, I believe it is, from the Department of Ed last week. So we know that there's at least $14,000 toward that $40,000 expenditure. And there are some potential other state funding pieces that we are still learning about that could potentially offset even that $40,000 right now.
Any other comments on the ag program? Tom?
Actually, the best comments have always been made by the people who've come and spoken in favor of maintaining this program, of which I'm totally supportive of it for all their reasons. And also, the world, the physical world is changing, and ag is going to be one of those power things that's going to either make or break civilization, I think. So any programs that we can have, sort of like, you could argue we're at a Sputnik moment where we need to think differently and act differently about agricultural issues and feeding our populace. I think it has to be a higher priority, and given that there is funding available now, and given the hopeful possibility that there will be other sources of income of funds, as the importance of ag, which never really lost its importance, but the urgency, I guess, maybe of it. I think it's imperative for us to continue the program and to hopefully expand it. So.
Jeff?
Yeah, I echo Tom's points, and and Noel, and definitely encourage the continuation of our role with Randolph to continue the ag program. And just met a lot of real sharp people that are involved in the ag program, and I think it's something that I always encourage more kids to be involved, but also the level where these kids are involved, and we're not even necessarily seeing that as far as if they're going to night programs or whatever else it is. But yeah, and I to look for different funding sources, and just to kind of just promote that and keep it in the mainstream, so we can come up with additional funding sources. So it's turns out to be a net positive, which it is. But I just kind of think it kind of got laid on the wayside here, and it's I mean FFA and whatever has been around forever, and I just think that it's obviously something that needs to be continued, and just continue to promote it and continue to encourage kids to get involved more with ag, and also educate the general public and other people of how important of industry that is to us. And not to mention that there's tons of farmers out there that own a lot of farmland that pay a lot of taxes to our district. So we also want to keep that in mind.
Julie?
So hearing the discussion at this juncture, I move to continue the agriculture education partnership with Randolph.
Can I ask you to remember that, because we have one more,
We could certainly do it as we go through, yeah.
because I thought we were going to do all of the discussion and then.
I think it's perfectly fine if we want to do that right now.
I was thinking if I make the motion, then we would have a second and then
All right.
discussion.
Well, then I'll accept the motion. Could you repeat the motion?
Yes, I move to continue the agriculture education partnership with Randolph.
Is there a second? Tom, second by Tom. Comment, Corey?
Yes, thank you. I also plan to support continuing this program for two reasons. Educationally speaking, I'm a graduate of a 2-year magnet school that was environmentally focused. So I think it's an opportunity for students to continue to find different pathways to their future. And I think we should provide as many of those opportunities as we can, and we have. And I think it's important that we keep that. Then financially, as we've discussed, we have found $14,000 in funding, which is great, which means it was a $26,000 cost this year. And as we know, if only 3 students next year don't come back to our schools because they go elsewhere for a different program, if we discontinue this, now we're losing money outright. So I think it would be foolish financially. And I also think the opportunity for students is there for us to continue this program.
Claudia, do you have any comments?
I would echo what Corey said. In fact, I was going to ask him if he would state that because he, just as he and I were talking recently, helped me understand that with the ag program, it landed on the reduction list because the committee, was committed to that. Our students interested in the program, our students signing up for the various, co-curricular activities. So I understand why it landed on the list, but then the more I process with board members and community members, coming to and then especially due to the, finding this additional funding, that, this is a program that could see us lose revenue, and that it's not, it wouldn't be wise to get rid of the ag program. If, like Corey was saying, if even 3 students leave, that would be a major cost to us. I was going to add one more thing. Just that somebody else brought up a point during the comment section that the ag program can actually be viewed as another point of offering diverse education to our student body. And that really resonated. So just adding that comment.
Thank you, Claudia. Any other comments? Julie?
I think that what I appreciate most about the discussion we've had and really the district's commitment to offering a lot of our students opportunity for a lot of post-secondary careers. And I think it's really helped us see an opportunity to really review opportunities we have within our own district. And I think by sustaining this agriculture partnership for another year does give us the opportunity to do that. And I think, I appreciate those who've come forward to advocate with great passion for this, but also for us as a district, recognizing that we have some opportunities that we can review and again present for our students, personal growth and long-term for successful careers. So, we are a rural community, and kind of sounds corny, but when I drive around Rice County and I see farm fields, I think, we're feeding the world. And I think that as a community, we're proud of our rural roots and our farms that have been in families for generations. And many of them, attended ag back in the day in Northfield or have gone through the Randolph program. So I like the momentum that we've had around this and the fact that we've had the opportunity to more fully engage in the opportunities that we have had for our students to be involved with agriculture program and then looking at increased ways. So I made the motion and plan to support it.
Other comments? Well, I had all sorts of comments, but you've all said them all now. So I think it's time for a roll call vote. And the motion is to maintain S9 agricultural education.
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Hurwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Aye.
And the motion carries. Okay, so now we're going to go to S2. And Claudia, do you want to explain why you want to remove this first separate consideration?
Well, I had questions about it. I wanted to know the number of students that it's impacting. And of course, we received, questions about incoming students, what those numbers look like. And I wanted to know what it's going to look like when those classes are phased out, where those students are going to go. There's not going to be new electives. So how are those students going to be placed so that class sizes don't, soar.
Yeah, so Claudia, I don't have a specific number for you on the number of students who have registered for the world language electives for next year. What I can tell you is that when Mr. Gelano has taken a look at his recommendation is based upon the number of people who have requested those electives. And so typically world language, the non-amistades portion does not have a substantial number of registrations, which is why we only have basically 1 or 2 sections at most of those programs at the middle school. So those students would be reassigned to other electives that are in place, such as family and consumer science. They would also be assigned to things like there is a STEM. It had been, because we can't find a licensed tech ed teacher, we have moved from a traditional tech ed curriculum to more of a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics curriculum that we're providing with someone with a different license. So I don't have the specific number of students for you. What I can say with confidence is that if Mr. Gelano were to reduce that same amount of FTE in other courses, it would affect far more students than the number that we are talking about with the non-amistades world languages.
Matt, are you able to say how many students, for example, are in the German class, that number?
I don't have that data with me here tonight, Claudia.
But you're confident, or at least what I'm hearing you say is that in French, German, that those classes have very few students in them. And so it wouldn't impact the numbers in other electives when those classes are phased out.
Yeah, so there are 2 reasons. Yes, the enrollment is part of it. The other part is that there's another part to the proposed reduction that I will share, which is all of the current world language teachers are also very part-time. So to achieve the priority piece that the committee brought forward of as small of general ed class sizes as practicable, we would have, there are very few other positions that are part-time in the building. So we would have to take full-time equivalent teachers and make them part-time, whether that be in other electives such as music or art, or whether we look at core classes that would be reduced. And when you go below 1.0, this is the second part of this. What you end up having is, first of all, we know that people will go out and find a different job that they can get at 1.0. And number 2 is if you have a 0.8 FTE, that now does change dramatically the building's ability to schedule courses. So it's the combination that this is many times low enrollment, not always, because just like all programs, it can ebb and flow in terms of the number of students. But it is also about how do we make sure that we honor the priorities of the committee in those other areas, Claudia. So I hope that is helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful. And then what would it look like to take these world languages at the middle school online? Is that
so that
possibility?
is something we've already started to explore. So this is something I do think that we will, as I've told several people, one of my visions of how online learning will look post-pandemic is not necessarily what people think it will look like right now. I think some people think of online learning and they think of our Portage program where people are all the time online. I do think that that's going to serve a significant number of students as we move forward, but the vast majority of students are going to be in classes most of the time. But what we're starting to see is because of students' comfort now with online education, what you're starting to see is people who will say, well, I'd really like this course that we don't offer. Could I take something? And we're seeing this more and more at the high school, specifically with PSEO courses. Because the colleges now have very robust online offerings, you're seeing students who will take 5 in-person courses, and they may take 1 or 2 PSEO or other kinds of online courses. We would be able to offer, and Principal Gelano and I have already begun to talk about opening up the Edgenuity catalog. That's our content provider for Portage for the secondary programs, opening that catalog to students at the middle school, initially trying to prototype it, but where students potentially, for example, during a study hall, would be able to potentially take one of the online courses, and languages are part of the Edgenuity catalog. So, but it wouldn't necessarily be limited to the just those language courses. The possibility could be that there could be some other courses that students could self-select as well. I do think that that's the future. I think you're going to see most people wanting to take in-person coursework because they value that social interaction. But there are going to be things that people take online because they want to have something that maybe we just don't have a critical mass of students to be able to offer. So we currently, even at our high school, which I've had some people question about whether the change in world language at the middle school would have an adverse impact on the high school. And I have zero data to suggest that. In fact, my experience would tell me it would further enhance people who would want to take languages at the high school. Even if you take a language at the middle school, it does not satisfy the college requirement to take multiple years of a language. So while students might get to be able to experiment with some world languages in the middle school, and we know that that's very valuable to people, it does not cover their college requirement. So the possibility would be that you might see people who I do not think it will for 1 minute have an adverse impact on the high school program. We have also talked with community ed about potentially offering some after school world language clubs to get the culture component that people have really valued. There are multiple ways that we can offer this, but at Northfield High School, a school our size to offer 3 full foreign language programs is unique. And to offer 3 distinct languages at our middle school is also unique for school districts of our size and geographic region. So I do think, Claudia, that there is the opportunity. We do plan to prototype that with some specific courses, not opening it up to everybody right away, but to thinking through how could we trial some of those online courses for middle school students during an unstructured period, if you will. And then in addition, thinking about how can we continue to provide those cultural opportunities through community education programming after school, because really what we've heard from families is the value of the chance to learn that language, to start to learn language, because no one is saying, I'm learning a language because the program is every other day at the middle school. No one is saying that I'm learning, proficiently that language at the middle school level, but they're getting to dabble in it. They're getting to experiment. They're getting to learn what they like and what they don't like about it. We do believe that we can offer some of that in different ways and potentially through some of it through an online course program as well.
Right.
Again, that's in the exploration phase, Claudia, just to be clear.
Sure. And to be clear, we're not making a value statement on any of these programs, any of the, the teachers or, that developmentally at the middle school, taking French, German, Spanish, is appropriate. And it does expose the students and it does, potentially spark them for the near future. But again, because we're in this budget situation, we're having to make these really difficult decisions. And it's not a value statement on the program or the teachers. I also wanted to just comment that, some people felt like they heard about the cut of the world languages of the middle school late, that it wasn't clear that that program was slated to be phased out. So I don't know, I guess I just want to make the comment that it has to do with interest, yes, and then also, like you said, retaining full-time teachers at the middle school. Matt, I had one more question on that particular reduction, and that was the band lessons and physical education 0.2 and 0.2 positions at the middle school. Does that just look like one less section of those band lessons and physical education?
That is correct. And so we have long had a very robust during the school day band lesson program. This 0.2 is above and beyond our 1.0 band teacher at the middle school who offers lessons already. This will require moving from, we do have some very small group, what I would say single one-on-one and one-on-two lessons. And what this will do is it will create some consolidation, and you will have to have some smaller group lessons between, it's possible there could still be some one-on-one lessons, but you'll most likely see smaller groups of 2 to 3 students playing the same instrument, having that lesson during the school day. The physical education section has to do with just some changes in the overall enrollment at the school.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on S2? Tom?
Out of curiosity, I looked at Wayzata schools in their 3 middle schools. They do not have world languages. It starts in the high school. And I like the idea of online languages. As Henry Ford might say, you can take any language you want so long as it's French, German, and Spanish. And in today's world, Chinese, Japanese, Russian, Ukrainian, any language from the Middle East, any other language, having that opportunity to do it online and having the space and the support to do it and to get credit for it would be valuable. And I don't know if the colleges are still requiring still have language requirements. I don't think that was the case for my sons. But certainly there's value in a foreign language, but rethinking how that happens, especially if you have the options online with support, again, and maybe a language teacher who could this may be versed in a couple different languages who could support and provide the in-person component, and then having the quiet space that's dedicated for online learning in a school building would be helpful too. So that's what
And just looking at the Edgenuity Minnesota catalog for middle school students, they do offer 2 levels of Spanish, 2 levels of French, 2 levels of Chinese, 2 levels of German, and 2 levels of Latin.
Any other comments, questions on S2? Okay, I think we've covered all of the line items that people wanted to pull out for separate consideration. And so now I have a question does anybody want to make a motion for any of the line items that we've discussed? Do you want to make a motion to maintain any of the line items that we've discussed?
We've already discussed and moved the ag program out, but I think Amy is asking, are there any of the other programs that people had brought forward that they would like to move to maintain?
Jeff?
So we've already handled S9.
Correct.
Okay, so make a motion to continue S4, social security officer, the minimum for another year.
Well, that's already on the table.
Already
So
on the table.
it
So
is
just a
already-
continuation of the motion to continue.
So are you saying you want to continue or just for 1 year and then a review, or you want, which is what's already on the table?
Okay.
Or do you want to do it for 2 years? Julie?
Well, just procedurally, if we want to, I think we determined, as we did with Portage Secondary, the discussion around the school security position was the same, and that we wouldn't need a motion to address it at this juncture because it is continued through the 22-23 school year.
And I just want to be clear too, just for when we adopt this package tonight, those things are scheduled for dissolution for the 23-24 school year. Now, we've committed
Yes.
on a couple of these that we will bring them back to you, because in order for them to be restored, you would have to take an affirmative action for next year's, for the 23-24 budget to affirm. But as Val and I have said, we have promised, we would expect you to hold us accountable to that, to bring that back for consideration at that point.
And what is the timing on that? Is that in the
Yep,
fall?
we start the budget plan and usually in December and January, right?
So we would be making a decision early in the year.
Correct.
Okay. Hearing no further motions about individual line items, do I hear a motion to approve the secondary package excluding the S9, which we've already removed? Julie?
I move to approve the secondary reductions package with the exception of line item S9 agriculture education.
Is there a second?
Second.
Corey, second by Corey. Okay, any more discussion? Then a roll call vote.
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Aye.
And the motion carries. Okay, moving on to the next package, which is the district services. Does anyone have any line items that they wish to remove for separate consideration? All right, I'm not seeing any. Oh, Julie,
No, I'm sorry. I was.
you're getting
thinking
ready
quick-
for the next.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All
I
right,
was-
she's
I'm-
queuing up. Julie, what would you like to say?
I move to approve the district services reduction package as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Time for a roll call vote.
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Aye.
We're losing a member for a few minutes. Should we just take a 5-minute break? Do I have a motion? 2 minutes, a 2-minute break?
Aye.
I did, as we concluded this, I did want to make a couple, just a
Oh.
quick comment.
Spend 2 minutes, please.
Okay, 2 minutes. So I just kind of wanted to recap and to just really express my gratitude for the work we did tonight and what brought us here, and how much I appreciate the strategic, planful, and proactive approach our district took to ensuring our financial stability and program sustainability over the next 4 years. You know, it's so profound and so moving for me as a board member to see the commitment our community has to our schools. They inspire our community. They are so incredibly proud of our schools. And I think we saw a level of engagement that we are all so incredibly grateful for, in terms of they stepped up to help us with the strategic plan. They stepped up to help us do this difficult work and in determining how we were going to identify programs and services that would help us achieve the goals we set forth in that strategic plan. We have been grateful. I think as a board, we've expressed all of this, but just to recap how grateful we have been to the public comments that have been made at our board meetings, to those who attended the community forum, and those, you know, all of the emails that we received and the phone calls that many of us took personally. You know, personally, I've been really moved by the passion that our community has for the programs that they were advocating for, and their willingness to engage and help us do our important work. And I appreciated Claudia articulating how difficult this has been for us. And we are fortunate as a district. We haven't had to make significant budget reductions in over 10 years. And so this isn't something we're used to doing. And I appreciate how we have all taken this to heart. And I can't really articulate or express my gratitude to all of you that have helped me get to the decisions I made tonight, and the great discussion we've had, and how we have come together as a board and really helped each other determine how we best move forward. And we shoulder a lot of responsibility. I mean, the community has elected us to do this work. We know that we need to be good financial stewards of the dollars that are entrusted to us. And so I think we are doing that tonight with again, the support that we've received from the community. And we really can't move on without expressing our gratitude to Dr. Hillman for his outstanding leadership and how he has skillfully and with great care and compassion guided us through this process. And also, Balmersdorf, you know, the data and all of the things that you had to pull together to for us to really understand the impact and, really fully understand the proposed reductions. And then to our administrators who served in a number of committees that was over and above their normal day job, which doesn't ever seem to end at 5 p.m. for them, I know, but it was additional responsibility that they had to shoulder to be a part of the district communities that did the strategic plan and did the budget prioritization process. So I think we have a lot to be grateful for, and just wanted to express again, I understand how difficult this work was for all of us to do, but I think we can feel really proud of the way we have done it, and that we are very mindful going forward of the impact these cuts will have on people. And we have tried to continually express that, but I think that we hope they will feel supported as they move forward in understanding how the unfortunate impacts of lack of funding has led us to make these critical decisions, but that in the end, we are really on a strong foothold, and that we have an amazing gem of a school district, and we are really incredibly proud to do this work. But we understand it's some difficult decisions, but we are moving forward in a position of strength, and we have a budget and programs that we know we can sustain over the foreseeable future, hopefully the next 5 years. So just wanted to make those comments before we moved on.
Well, good timing on the comments, and thank you for all of those excellent words. I think you speak for all of us on the board with our thanks to the whole community who've been involved in this process and have been supportive, even if they haven't been happy with some suggestions. I feel that we've been very supportive, and people have been very helpful to us and very kind to us as we go through this process. So we now need to move on to the fund balance target. We currently maintain a 16% fund balance, and it's one of our benchmarks even in our recent strategic plan. But there's been discussion of whether we should change that or not. I'm wondering if I'd like to open it up right now to people to discuss what we should do about the fund balance.
I think it's just important to know that 16%, is the gold standard right now for districts of our size. When we look at the Big Nine Conference, the average is around 11%, and it's quite a range. I mean, it does range from 8% or therefore to us at the high end of 16%, but the average is at around 11%. And the recommendations that we have for you are not to go to 11%, to be super clear. We're suggesting that it would be responsible yet to consider something around 15% or 14%. I think it's just important to remind people that when we had a major underplanned, I should say, we knew there was going to be a change in our health insurance. We knew that we were starting to see greater claims because we pay very close attention to that. But the increase that we would have had to have to our employees this past fall did surpass what we had expected. Having fund balance allows you to do things like you did and step in and help offset that for employees. And that was a huge thing for us to be able to do. There are a lot of districts that would have never been able to do that with lower fund balances. So fund balance does play an important role. Val and I have talked about this at length because we are responsible for this. At the end of the day, it is Val and I who are responsible for this. And we have looked at a number of calculations, and we are comfortable at this point because we think it is important. We are not a bank, right? We want to have the dollars in the bank to be able to provide liquidity and be able to have the flexibility. But when we look across the state and we look at the amount of cash that would still have us have in the bank, we do believe that 15% or 14% is responsible. I also did make a comment at a recent meeting about the potential of the downgrading of our Standard & Poor's piece. And we've talked a lot about this as well. And what we know is that it is possible you could have a 15% fund balance, and based on the amount of debt you carry, you could be downgraded anyway. We also understand that even at 14%, the possibility of maintaining it while lower is still there. And so we do not want that to be a measure that you use to say, well, we don't want to reduce the fund balance because we're worried about AA+. We are worried about that too, but we do not believe that that should be a driving consideration in this discussion. So I just wanted to open up to clarify some of those comments we've made at previous meetings.
Any discussion on the fund balance? Julie?
I'm sorry, just to move things along. I move to modify the district's fund balance target to 14%.
Second.
Seconded by Noel. Okay, any discussion on 14%?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jeff.
We talked about the S, and I'm no expert on levies and bond market and the A+. It's a matter of, if we're going to go out, and look for levy or bond in the next few years. I mean, based on our rating. I mean, I see a big inflationary period coming up. I'm not an economist, but I mean, I think there's some real storms coming in for a while. And I mean, I like the idea of, as we talked about before, the 16%, but I mean, it's obviously the number comes from, it's 60 million a year. So it's, 1%, that's 600,000. So the difference between leaving it at 16%, going down 1% on the S&P, which may affect us or not, to going down to 14%. And the bigger part of that is, boom, there's 100. I mean, that's 1.2 million into the general fund. And what I see is one of the biggest variables, and that's going to say who gets to decide, obviously, where that money's going. But I think that a huge variable is this insurance scenario that we're in. So I don't know. I think that obviously the motion is out there. I just say that, again, maybe some more discussion on pros or cons of, the 16, 15, 14, as far as other board
Are you
members.
suggesting any of those? Where do you fall?
I was probably okay with 15. And to see what's the real ramification between 15 and 14. Obviously it's 600,000, but what are you really going to do with that? And is that really going to hurt us at all going from 15 to 14 as far as a bond rating?
Yeah, we don't. Go ahead, Val.
I was gonna say, we don't know. And so I think it would be difficult to use that as the reasoning, because there are multiple factors that they look at. So they assess our internal controls. They look at our audit report. Did we have any findings? Am I competent when I talk about the budget? Like, they're analyzing all of those pieces to make sure that we have systems in place. The rating that we got on our last bond rating very clearly said, we're basically giving you this rating, but if you don't make adjustments to your budget, that will affect your future rating, regardless of our 16% goal. And so there's a lot of factors that go into it. And I think the best we can do is continue to be good stewards and show that we're financially responsible. We are making the difficult decisions to ensure that our budget is balanced. And again, a AA bond rating is still an excellent bond rating.
And I think the other part that we don't know the answer to is that in our discussion with Ellers, the amount of debt that we would carry is also a significant factor. So we have about $40 million of debt coming off in 2 years. And then, as we discuss what are the next steps with updating the facility, the high school facility, to keep that competitive, even through just the HVAC repairs and the kinds of things that you need to do just to make sure that the building, that we are taking care of the building as you should with the internal components. So we do have a little bit of room, but it also depends on how much you would think about doing with something at the high school. We've had a very conservative, I think, approach of Finance Advisory Committee, as we've told you, giving some targets to that group that are at $70 million or less. Those are the targets that we've given them. You, of course, always had the final decision on that if you chose to do something different above and beyond that. But we don't know. It depends on the market. It depends on a number of things. So we just don't know how much more debt, if we were to incur, would also be the catalyst for a reduction. You could still have 16% from what we understand. And depending upon the amount of debt that we'd look at incurring, that has a potential impact on our bond rating as well. So we have done a lot of discussion about this because it is a metric that we do take seriously. And we've been proud of it. But again, it comes back to that we wanted to make you aware of it. We just are not recommending that you use that as the driving factor in your determination of fund balance. And what happens to those dollars? Who gets to decide? You do. Because we provide a budget for you every year that includes what our projected fund balance is, and you approve that budget every year. So I think this is also an important time to say with the fund balance that none of these reductions that we're proposing include any kind of salary freezes, because we are right sizing our staff to meet the reality of fewer students. If we were to start going down the road of salary freezes, now we have a difficult time competing for the best talent that we want in this school system. If we have a breakthrough in housing, and those kinds of things, we do feel confident that people will move to the district, and we want to be able to have that competent and highly skilled staff. So what do we spend fund balance on? We'll spend that additional money on what we spend all the time, which is salary and benefits, because we hire people to do good things for kids. So Jeff, that's where it would most likely be utilized. It would be used to fund the cost of running our programs. We would just not have the catalyst of 16% to bring back any budget reductions to you. That threshold would be lowered to 14%. So it would allow us to be more sustainable with that lower goal as we move ahead.
And can I jump in? Is that okay? I would like to just remind board members that it is the minimum. If you look at the history of the reports that I've provided, we have not hit 16%. We have always been above it. And the reason we're in this process is because we're projecting to be at 16. So 14% is still $8.4 million. It's still a significant amount of money to help weather any kind of uncertain circumstances we would find ourselves in, but it is the minimum. It's not to say that we will immediately be there. We could end at 16% or 17%. There are quite a few variables that impact that. So just for your reference.
Other comments, questions? Corey?
Dr. Hillman, you said 11% is the Big 9 average for the fund balance, and the lowest is 8, which tells me the majority are at or below 11. What's the second highest one in the Big 9?
Second highest one in the Big 9, to my knowledge, would be 12%.
Okay, thank you.
Val, that squares with, I think I'm right.
I'm going to look it up.
Okay.
I saw Tom first. Tom?
What historically have we been at? Has it always been 16%?
So the 16% fund balance is not a forever thing, but it does go back to, I would say, 2004. When my predecessor, Dr. Chris Richardson, came to the district, and Tom Stringer, former business director, and they knew there were some reductions that were needed, but when there was a thorough analysis done, the school was very close to statutory operating debt. Noel, I'm looking to you. I think that that's a fair statement. Pretty close.
I'd like to remember that it was at one time 20%.
Right. So there were some, and that was there were days where you'd see a lot more fund balance for a variety of different reasons. It was a different financial time. That was also when you'd see 5 and 6% increase to the formula in the 1980s, right? So very different times. But I think the current piece goes back to 2004, when there were much more significant cuts that were needed than were originally anticipated. And Dr. Richardson and Mr. Stringer and the board at the time put the 16% in because that was the early warning sign to make sure that we never got close to statutory operating debt again. And that has served us very well. 14% also would serve as a very good, or 15%, they would both serve as a substantial safeguard against statutory operating debt, which is when your fund balance goes negative. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about being in a negative. Now, remember, it takes years to build fund balance, and if your decision making is not thorough, it can be gone very quickly. So this is a very important piece because it does provide us the margin that we need to be able to effectively run programs and to be a fiscally sustainable school district. And the smaller the district, just one, the smaller the district, the bigger the fund balance, in my opinion, needs to be. If I'm a district of, say, well, let's just take a look at our charter schools who have 130, Prairie Creek has 170 students. Their fund balance goal is if they project they're going to be below 16 or below 30% 3 years out, they start making cuts, because in a very small organization, if you lose 5 students, that's a big deal, right? If I'm a district of 600 students, I might need to have a 25% fund balance goal, because if I start to lose students quickly, I'm not able to maintain that budget. We do think that when you look at districts our size, that 16, 15, 14 is right in the ballpark of where we need to be sustainable. So I apologize. I just wanted to clarify that part.
Julie?
Just one other point about SOD is the state takes over running your school district as well.
That's
So
correct.
I appreciated Corey asking that question, because I know at 16%, we have to be a significant outlier. And if we took Northfield 16% out, where would the big 9 fall in terms of fund balance percent?
So I want to clarify a couple of things now that I have it in front of me. The 11% is actually the average for districts between 3,000 and 5,000 students, not just the big 9. I went through and I got all of the big 9, but I also looked at some surrounding districts and a few other, just for a variety of comparison. The lowest in the big 9 is 5%, and that is Red Wing. And ours is the highest at 16. Dr. Hillman was correct. 12% is the second highest in the big 9. I will also point out that there are a wide variety of calculations. So ours is the most conservative. It is your total, 16% of your total general fund expenditures. There are other districts that exclude things that already have a restricted fund balance. So they will take LTFM and operating capital out of those expenditures because there's a dedicated revenue. Those fund balances by law cannot be negative. So for instance, Albert Lee's at 12%, and their calculation is total general fund expenditures minus student activities, operating capital, LTFM, and scholarships. So there's different ways to calculate it as well. But the 11% is the average for districts at 3,000 to 5,000 students.
Thank you. Because we've had such a big agenda, we are coming up on 9 o'clock. So I need a motion to have our meeting go past 9. Motion moved by Jeff.
Yeah.
Any second? Second by Corey. Now we need a roll call vote for our meeting to go past 9 o'clock.
Roniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Hurwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmoen,
Aye, only if they turn up the heat.
And the motion passes. Claudia, do you have any comments on the fund balance?
I do not have any additional comments on the fund balance. I think that going to 14% is reasonable.
Jeff.
Yeah, I was before when you were talking, I mean, because we were at 16, we talked about that was kind of a staple thing at 16. I don't think, anybody for a motion, you're going right from 16 to 14. If we went to 15, I don't see if you wanted to make another motion later. I would like to see, really, if we're looking for money or bonds or levies or whatever this next election cycle or whatever, if that really is going to affect Arno. So I'm gonna stay at 15. Not that I wouldn't go down, but I'm staying at 15.
Other comments, questions? Well, I have comments, and I was initially in the camp with Jeff, where I'm very conservative, and in the 6 years I've been on this board, it's been repeatedly told to us how important the 16% fund balance is and what that means, and how and it has also several times saved us for those rainy day expenses that we've had. So and then we put it in our strategic plan even, and now a few months later, we're being asked to change it. So I was initially thinking 15%. I know we need to free up some money, but Val, you convinced me, because I know you're very conservative with our money too, and you certainly have taken very good care of it, and you know where it's going, and you know how it's being spent. And so because it's you and Dr.
No
Hillman.
pressure, Al.
And I believe you when you say that 14 is a minimum, and that your aim is for more, and hopefully that would be 15 or 16%. I am willing to support a 14% official floor on the
So,
target fund.
so let me add to my point, which was the point before, we're talking about a 15%. So officially, the administrative recommendation is that you would be fine going to 14. Is that a statement that's been made, or is just a recommendation, or?
So I'm not exactly sure. I don't have it right in front of me how it was worded. Both Dr. Hillman and I would be comfortable with either 14 or 15.
Yeah.
So whatever the board decides, we will be comfortable with.
Because that was basically not being I mean, when you talked about the S&P last time, and it was a difference, you're talking between 14 and 15, whether that bond rating would stay there. But if you're comfortable at 14, then, I mean, so to me too, it's kind of like, well, we just got 1.2. I mean, what's the pain and where that's really going to go to? What's it going to go for? You said salaries and benefits.
Sure, well,
So
that's what we pay.
that's right. So it's just going to go right back into the general budget. So, I mean, with that reconsideration and that recommendation coming, basically is what you're saying is that you're comfortable with that, then I would be okay with the 14.
Okay, any more comments? I think it's time for a roll call vote. And the motion is for 14% fund balance target.
My motion was to modify the district's fund balance target to 14%.
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Aye.
And the motion carries. Okay. Now we're on to the placement of licensed staff on unrequested leave of absence. Any discussion you want to bring?
Yes, this
for
is,
us?
so of all of the reductions that we did, there are 4 people who are placed on unrequested leave of absence. As a result of that, there's 1 because of a licensure issue. But the 5 folks who are on this list would be placed on unrequested leave in accordance with the Northfield Education Association contract. So we need it's a resolution. And because we're doing roll call vote this evening, that is not a change. So
Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Claudia.
So I see the French position is on the list, but not the German and Spanish position. Why is that?
yes, that is correct. So in the case of the middle school German component, that teacher was a probationary teacher, and we have already non-renewed that contract. And so that was not a tenured person, so they don't need to go on the unrequested leave of absence. In addition, with the Spanish reductions, the individual who would have been the lowest on the Spanish seniority list, that person has now been assigned to a different position in the district where that person will do some other responsibilities, will also teach some Spanish, but they will have another role at the high school within a licensed teaching position. So these are the positions for which people are going to have less FTE than what they are that they are guaranteed for under their continuing contract. Is that helpful, Claudia?
Yes, thank you.
Other questions, comments? All right, time for a vote.
We need a motion
Oh,
first.
we need a motion. Who wants to move? How should the motion go? You have it, Julie, of course.
I move to approve placing the listed staff on requested leave as presented.
Is there a second? No. Seconded by no.
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Aye.
And the motion carries. Now to the bid approval for security cameras.
Yes, and Director of Buildings and Grounds Cole Nelson could not be here this evening. Val Murderstorff and I will provide the frame for this. So you approved us releasing bids a couple of meetings ago. We did have our bid day last week. Our bid days lately have not been outstanding, but this one was. The anticipation was that for the package that was presented, we had anticipated around $500,000. The bids ranged from a low bid of $330,000 to a high bid of $469,000. There were 5 contractors who offered bids for the project. I do want to point out that this board has asked a couple of times to ensure that we provide the bid packages and encourage a minority or women-owned businesses to bid. We did work with Knutson Construction to identify 3 women or minority-owned businesses in this particular area. My understanding is that they were reached out to. None of those businesses chose to submit a bid, but just I want to make that point to the board. The low responsible bidder is Custom Alarm at $330,000. So I also want to point out just that to reiterate, this is really doing a replacement and modest expansion of our existing camera system there. This includes the infrastructure cabling, some additional servers, software. So we'd be going from 161 existing cameras to 190 cameras. We're reusing all of the existing cameras at Greenville Park. We're also adding there are some new cameras that have been purchased in the last few years at Bridgewater and Spring Creek during the referendum projects. So of those 190 total cameras, 39 will be reused. And so we feel very good about this bid day. We're very pleased and that the project would be executed in just the next couple of weeks here. They would start right at the end of the school year. Did I miss anything, Val? And the other part that I just want to make is that board members have asked just about policy related to security and surveillance. We do have our policy committee is being preparing to look at 2 potential policies, one that would govern the surveillance on campus. And then the School Boards Association recommends an additional policy specific to surveillance cameras on school buses. What I'll tell you is that the surveillance policies really mostly focus around record retention and those kinds of things. It's the bulk of those policies. So there aren't going to be anything earth shattering to you, but we will plan to have those brought to you at no later for first reading by the June board meeting.
Any comments or questions? Corey.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Claudia.
Oh, you can go.
No, go ahead, Corey.
The second time I've done that, she can go.
I just wanted to be reminded what fund this is coming out of. It's not general fund, is it?
It is general fund, but we actually reserved part of our fund balance last year to cover the costs.
Capital fund balance, right? No, general fund balance.
General fund balance.
Okay.
Corey.
Dr. Hillman, I assume this is a very thorough vetting process from those who go out for bids, but I'm curious from your experience, how often is the lowest bid from what's deemed a responsible bidder? Is it ever the case where the bid is so low, it seems irresponsible or not feasible?
I'm going to ask Val to answer that question.
I would say very rarely. There are times where we have, honestly, I can't actually think of a time where we did not take the lowest bidder. There have been times where there was maybe a misunderstanding of the scope of the project, and we have gone back and asked if the bid that they submitted really actually got all the work done. And there have been times where they've, withdrawn a bid or something like that, and then we would not obviously accept that. But it's pretty rare. I think our biggest concern is just when there's a really wide scope or range of bids to make sure that we're getting that whole scope covered. We do, I believe, or I'm pretty sure that we have had Custom Alarm do work for us before, and we have not had any issues with them. So I believe that they understood the scope and will be able to perform the work fine.
Appreciate that. I was just curious because of the range there. I mean, the low bid's 30% less than the top bid, and obviously different companies bid differently, and that seems significant. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and
And
some, go ahead, Val.
sorry, I was just, that's also, I would say, not uncommon right now either, because of the just uncertain nature of things. There's been a lot more variability.
Questions, comments? Jeff?
I'm sure there are some government regulations to follow. Then obviously, in some cases, a government bid, you have to take the lowest bid. So I mean, what are some off the top? Well, government regulations that you'd comment on in this process?
So we are actually required to accept the lowest bid unless they are not a responsible bidder. So that's the language actually from the law. And if we choose not to accept the lowest bidder, we are required to document in the minutes why we would not accept the lowest bidder. But otherwise, that is actually a requirement in the bid law.
Julie?
I can make a motion to approve the grand total base bid for the district-wide security camera upgrade project to Custom Arm at a cost not to exceed $330,000.
For a second?
Second, go ahead.
Tom, second by Tom.
And I just want to point, it's custom alarm. I had missed just an L and an A in that second part. I thought I had caught that.
And I just want to thank you for reaching out to the women and minority-owned businesses and giving them an opportunity to bid. And I hope we can continue to do that with future projects. Discussion, comments?
Just where are they out of? I mean, just where are they located? I mean,
I'm actually not sure.
okay, sorry.
Rochester, they're from out of Rochester.
Okay, I think we're ready for a vote.
Brania,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gurwitz.
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Aye.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmoen,
Aye.
The motion carries.
Do you think Claudia would like to add some comments? Not related to this, but just prior to us going to items for information?
Claudia?
I just wanted to, I mean, Julie always does such a great job of summarizing and thanking everyone, and I appreciate that about her. And I wanted to add to her comments just that we recognize as a board that everyone in our buildings goes above and beyond, and we just appreciate them for doing that. And that we, that we're not, through this budget prioritization, we're not compromising on meeting the academic and emotional needs of our student body. But it just a recognition of that, because it's been, that's been brought up about what's going to happen to these students' academic enrichment, or these students' emotional needs. And then also just so grateful for all the creative solutions that came out of the committees and out of the public comment. And even some funding that came out of that. So I'm just encouraged by that. And then finally, recognition again of how actively engaged this community is. And I'm just so grateful for that. And I've seen people ask to actively advocate for public funding. And so again, just grateful for that. There's a lot of loss naturally, but if we chose to push off, it would just be that much more difficult. So like Julie and the rest of the board, just want to thank Dr. Hillman and Director Murtaugh for doing this hard work of keeping us accountable and sustainable. And I'm grateful to each of you board members for all the work that you put in. Thanks.
Thank you, Claudia. Now we will move on to items for information. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, the first one is you have the May 22 enrollment report in your packet, and you'll see very similar to last month, just a couple of students less in the full-time only category there. So we've seen that part. And then you have the class sizes and those kinds of things as part of that enrollment report as you get monthly as well. The second item would be the graduation update. Just want to reiterate that we're very excited that it's scheduled for 2 o'clock on Sunday, June 5th at Memorial Field. And we just want to be clear that if in the case of inclement weather, graduation will be held inside the high school gymnasium. Last year, we had an alternate date because of the pandemic. This year, we're going back to the tradition, if there is poor weather, that we will graduate inside the high school gymnasium with some overflow seating in the high school auditorium. And then high school teacher Kevin Dahl has invited the board to the National Honor Society Senior Induction Ceremony that will be held 1 week from today, May 16th, 7 o'clock in the high school auditorium. There will be student and guest speakers to celebrate the achievement, and a brief reception will follow in the lower cafeteria. There is no RSVP needed for that event. So we just want to make sure that board members are aware of that.
Thank you, Dr. Hillman. And our last item on the agenda is future meetings. We have a meeting on 2 weeks from today, Monday, May 23rd, regular board meeting, and then another meeting on Monday, June 13th at from 4 to 5:45, which is a work session right before our regular board meeting at 6 o'clock. What will we be working on?
The work session, you will be hearing the report from the high school facility task force.
Sounds good. Okay. With that, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Good.
Moved by no. Is there a second? Tom, seconded by Tom. All in favor?
Need a roll
Oh,
call vote.
we need to do a roll call vote. All right. Go ahead.
Broniak,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
Gurwitz,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George,
Hi.
Pritchard,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Stratmone.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for being here for this long meeting. We are adjourned.